Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Sometimes I wonder about my life. I lead a small life. Well, valuable, but small. And sometimes I wonder, do I do it because I like it or because I haven't been brave? So much of what I see reminds me of something I read in a book, when shouldn't it be the other way around? I don't really want an answer. I just want to send this cosmic question out into the podcast. So good night, dear podcast. It was between that. It felt like for this movie, it feels appropriate to pick one of the email monologues.
I mean, you could also do the whole purpose of places like podcasts is for people with no decision-making ability whatsoever.
This is the thing. I mean, the quotes page for this movie is very long, and I was struggling to find a good one. And you said you're surprised because this movie does have some good zingers, but I feel like they're longer. This movie doesn't have like something like When Harry Met Sally is so snappy. This film is a little
podcast.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
And this may make me seem like an uncultured rube. When he's taking the caviar.
Yes.
What is that thing?
Egg salad.
That the caviar is around.
Oh, I thought it was a goat cheese. It was a big cheese ball.
Is it a cheese? It looks
so yellow. It's a gigantic cheese ball. Yeah, that's like covered in like a coating, I think.
Oh, I thought it was egg salad when I watched it last night.
It almost looked like egg salad, but then I'm like, why is eggs and caviar seems like... I would too. It's just sort of a funny combo. I don't know.
If I saw a ball of egg salad surrounded by caviar, I would have skipped the caviar and gone right to the egg salad.
Right. Meanwhile, here Mr. David Sims is pretending that he's a country rube when in fact he blocked out everything but the caviar. So caviar crazy the second it was on screen. He couldn't even process what other food was happening.
Give me that cav.
He couldn't be cavalier about the caviar.
The best part about that scene is it's so utterly Nora Ephron to comment on an etiquette issue. Like I'll never forget Nora Ephron being like writing in, I don't even remember, maybe Heartburn or something else where she was like, you got to buy a round table. That's the table. You know, these little like advice things that she gives without being condescending somehow is throughout her whole career. She even puts it in a freaking movie that says the caviar is a garnish. You can't eat the caviar like that. It's a garnish. The other thing I noticed last night that I'd never noticed before is when they're talking, she's taking the caviar off his plate and putting it back onto the plate, which is insane.
Whenever Nora Ephron puts in like a Nora-ism, it reminds me of watching Seinfeld, where like they just fully put one of Jerry's stand-up lines in the dialogue for no reason. And you're like, this has no business being in this episode. It's just something that Jerry said on stage once that got a laugh. Like sometimes these, like the Starbucks lines are just things that Nora has said to friends, you know, and she just dropped it in.
Right. And in the same way that like Seinfeld had like 15 hours of really strong material that he could pull from across all the seasons of Seinfeld, Nora Ephron had an entire life of things like this. I have so much to say about this, but I was talking to my sister, who will never be a guest on the podcast again, about the role of food in Nora Ephron movies, and she was pointing this out. And obviously her last movie is her like overt food movie.
Right, she finally makes the big food movie. Yeah.
But there are so many food scenes that are memorable throughout her films, whether they're overtly about food or whether they're just sort of using food to make some sort of point of characterization.
The apple in Sleepless in Seattle.
Right, and even obviously like Katz's Deli in When Harry Met Sally, and the garnish here, like, and the pie in Heartburn. Like between the films she wrote and the films she directed, the carbonara in bed.
Carbonara. I would say her thing with like food, but mostly about hospitality, I think is a big Nora Ephron thing. It's like, I said etiquette, but I think I just mean hospitality. Like, you know, the way to make people feel the most comfortable in your space is what she's the most concerned with. And it comes up again and again and again. And for some reason, she never ran out of ways to say kind of the same things over and over again, which is like the best thing a writer can do. Yeah. And the way that she fits it into a movie like this is really so charming. I mean, I just want to say, this is my favorite movie. Like, you're not catching me saying anything bad about this movie. This is it for me. You already knew that, but this is it for me.
That's why we're having you.
Yeah. Right. And in fact, I mean, we got some table setting to do here. Speaking of etiquette.
We got some caviar setting to do here.
Right. Because this is Blank Check. This is a podcast about filmographies, directors of massive success early on in their career, given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce. Baby. It's a miniseries on the films of Nora Ephron. We've gotten to the titular film, the one that inspired the miniseries title. Because, of course, this is You've Got Podcast. We're talking
We
You've
really
Got
put
Mail.
so much thought into that.
Yeah, really.
I mean, my pitch was You've Podcast.
Right. Which I hate.
Two separate words.
I like that.
It only works if you say it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Otherwise, it sounds like You've Podcast. What is that a verb now?
Uh-huh.
But our guest today, a quick return from their last appearance. But it was when we recorded our last episode, they asked, who are you doing like for the next two miniseries? We brought this up and they said like, oh my God, we have to be on a Nora Ephron. And we had in fact booked someone else to do You've Got Mail, but we realized, no, we got to do a swap here. We got to rearrange the table because this movie is so fucking important to the two of you. And we knew that. And then as we started talking about more, we realized even more layers to sort of the history both of you have with this movie, collectively and separately. Our guest returning from the Who Weekly podcast, Bobby Finger and Lindsey Weber.
Hey.
Yes, the one of the first projects pre-Who Weekly that Bobby and I ever worked on together was an annotated screening of You've Got Mail at the Housing Works bookstore. I don't know how we pulled it off. It had like pop-ups. It had interactive saying. It had a raffle with items from Nora. It was right before Nora died, and she donated all these amazing items. We both have these signed DVDs that I have gotten framed in my kitchen. It's like one of the most important events of my New York City life. And it made the movie even more like endeared to me personally.
I went to that. It was a fully great event. Rewatching the movie last night, I kept on going, wait a second, how did they pull that off? Because the last time I'd seen the movie was at that show.
Really?
And I was remembering
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
It was Valentine's Day-ish, like the day before Valentine's Day, 2012.
And Bobby, why do you remember so specifically when that happened?
Because it's the day I met my husband.
Fucking bombshell.
Experienced share host Josh Fjellstad, the best podcast in the business.
We met after a screening of You've Got Mail.
That you organized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which that's the fact I didn't know until after we had finally made the swap and said, let's get Bobby and Lindsey. Fucking You've Got Mail is responsible for your marriage,
I know, it's really
Bobby.
stupid. It's like it's a little too much. I don't even like thinking about it, to be honest. Right. It's like too much.
You're like, no, come on, that's too much.
No, it's so cute. And it's really like I worked with Josh and I peer pressured him as well as my other coworkers, including
Lindsey's
Tanner, co-host of the iconic Pokemon podcast.
Which I have bullied my way onto twice, and I will do it again.
His favorite show, David's favorite show in any medium.
Here you go. You have to come to this. Like, I hope people come to this. Like, it has to be a big thing.
Right. And it was the two of you and Andrea Rosen. And let me point out that it was such a big thing that I remember I watched the entire movie from a staircase. Like, it was packed.
Yeah. Right. That staircase.
Yeah. I was on that spiral staircase.
It was just so fun. Because of the movie. And I think also Andrea is good. Andrea is good at what she does.
She's a producer. She's still a producer.
And so because it was Nora Ephron, it was very easy to get press for this thing. And I think it even had a little blurb as like something you do in the New Yorker. Like it was in the print issue. So like it got the word got out in ways we never expected because Andrea is so good at like getting the word out and talking to people and knowing people. But also we got getting just the call for artists that we just knew on Tumblr, donate stuff that we can raffle off. We got the weirdest, coolest stuff. We just reached out to Nora Ephron's assistant out of the blue and said, like, does she want to come talk? That would be great. Because no one knew she was sick at this point.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I remember you making a point of the fact that, like, she left things downstairs with her doorman, which you went and picked up, but that you didn't get to meet her and she didn't come to the event. In retrospect, it became clear it was because she was very sick.
Yeah. And Lindsey couldn't, I had to go alone, and because we all sort of felt like, oh, maybe we'll luck out and she'll be there and hand it to us. Right. And no, they handed a big regret that I have is I threw away the bag that she gave all the stuff in. It was because she gave us some old tote bags from the shoot. She gave us a lot of DVDs. She gave Lindsey and Andrea and I just DVDs for ourselves.
But it was like a lot of also like crew hats and like promotional stuff. I remember.
I can't believe I didn't steal some of that stuff.
But the bag that the assistant gave it to me in was from an orthopedic shoe store.
Right. And you made a joke about that.
Oh my God, this is Nora Ephron's orthopedic shoe store bag. And I threw the bag away when I moved apartments at some point, not thinking. And it was a yellow bag. Anyway, I'm so sad about that.
But I think the reason why
Nora has your blessing. There was an email she sent that specifically said Nora has your blessing.
Knowing amazing. Knowing that she knew that we were doing it was enough. Knowing that she had maybe read about it in the New Yorker or saw that that these young people were doing something silly with it, and is truly all that I could ask for.
But you also honestly. You guys are being self-effacing about it and saying it was like a silly thing. And Bobby, you're saying it's so weird that you met your husband there. But it's also like a bunch of young people, like a generation later, doing a You've Got Mail screening at a bookstore in order to raise money is something out of a Nora Ephron movie. Like it is very much the type of event that the couple meets at or has their second or third argument at, you know?
You're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Housing Works bookstore is the most shop around the corner bookstore you could get downtown. I mean, it is the epitome of that. Yeah, truly.
And the two of you wrote, you did all these trivia facts and jokes about the movie that were part of the video. It was like pop-up videos, like VH1. Yeah. But there were graphics popping up. That was the thing while rewatching this last night where I was like, wait a second, how did they actually do that?
Well, Andrea's ex-boyfriend, Ricky, who is now the host of many videos at AOL Build. You definitely seen this guy.
I have been interviewed by him. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great guy. He volunteered, we pressured him to do all of the graphics work on this thing.
Well,
and
I made all the graphics. He overlaid them.
Okay. True. But what's even funnier about this, and maybe makes it more special, is that cut is lost.
It's gone.
It was on his hard drive. Some hard drive got messed up. We don't even want to get into it. It's very depressing, but that cut is lost to time.
One night only.
One night only. Yeah, truly one night only for hours and hours of work.
We had to cut. Housing Works gave us a hard out. And so we had to cut, I think 25. There was a very specific number of minutes that we had to cut to the movie to make it fit between the raffle, the opening, the goodbye, the leave.
It's a long movie.
It just so happens we were like, what are we going to cut? This movie is perfect. How are we going to cut anything? And we cut the Dabney Coleman subplot. And it turns out that if you cut the Dabney Coleman subplot entirely and the father, it was the precise number of minutes that we needed to lose, and no one cared. And there's outside of those scenes, they're only referenced by characters maybe once.
So it makes
the enchanting
sense
thing.
They never, and it makes sense. There's maybe one stray reference that Tom makes whenever he's not in a scene that we had to cut, and no one would have noticed it.
You need 20 more minutes of Dabney Coleman if you're going to really have that make sense. Because anytime that's brought up, you're like, what's the dynamic here? His dad and grandpa are too horny and evil?
The grandpa went on one date with her.
Right. And it doesn't really add to, Joe Fox doesn't need the added layer of bachelor. We don't really need to know his why is he like this? It's we get it. He has an annoying girlfriend. He's a self-involved rich person. That's we don't need to know that he has a bad family life, and that's why he's like this.
I think it's there to soften him, right? It's sort of look at his dad and grandpa.
Yeah, he's a victim of circumstance.
He's cursed with a horny dad and grandpa who gave him millions of dollars and a business to run. I think that it's funny. I didn't even realize you would cut that stuff from it, but it makes sense because as I was rewatching, I was like, I don't remember any of this Dabney Coleman stuff being in the movie.
Like every time I watch it, and I've seen it 1 million times, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, right, this.
And it was sad because Dabney Coleman had died, and I remember feeling a little
fairly recently at that point.
Yes, and I felt terrible because Andrea made a point to say Dabney Coleman, but we had cut him from the whole movie essentially.
And Andrea had dated Dabney Coleman as well. And that was another conflict of interest, right?
Yes, they met at Zabar's actually.
Yeah. I think you mean that John Randolph died. Dabney Coleman still alive.
Dabney Coleman,
my God, are you kidding?
Dabney Coleman lives on. He's 88 years old, baby.
Okay. Wait, wow. I am misremembering.
You can't fuck with Buffalo Bill.
We're recording this episode in the middle of a national pandemic, in a global pandemic.
Sure.
Who's got eyes on Dabney Coleman? Can we put him in a panic room? What do we do to make sure, if he's lived this long, we cannot lose Dabney Coleman?
The last time I remember seeing him was, he was in Boardwalk Empire. He was very old, and he played Nucky Thompson's old mentor or whatever, and he was in a wheelchair, and he was man, that's the last time I saw him.
How am I remembering that Dabney Coleman died? That is a very
I remember
weird,
that too. I had that exact same memory around that same period of time.
That's a Shazam memory that we're sharing or whatever. A Kazam memory, a fake memory.
A Berenstein Bears memory.
Yes.
When you said he died, it did ring a bell to me. I was like, I definitely read a Dabney Coleman obit. Yeah, and it was Buffalo Bill.
I do remember it just being a real problem because the movie was so precious to us that we were like, we can't cut anything. We're just we're going to have to cancel the event. We can't cut a fucking frame out of this movie.
Right.
But then when you watch it, you're like,
it's a
none
little
of this
long.
needs to be here. None of this needs to be here.
2 hours is a long running. Sleepless in Seattle, which has a more convoluted plot than this, is an hour 45, and that's about right.
Yes, especially for this movie, especially for the content of this movie. You're right. It should be sweeter. It should be shorter.
Right. I'm never having an unpleasant time while I'm watching it, but it does seem like perhaps the Dabney cut or the Dabney list cut is stronger. I will say too that in terms of the backstory, the character shading, all of that, you get a better sense of the Dabney Coleman and the John Randolph characters just from the scene where Tom Hanks is explaining the relationship to the two kids.
Mm-hmm.
Than you do from any scene that they're in.
Mm-hmm. The scenes that they're in, you're these must be his bosses.
Right.
There's just no family relationship that's really clear. It doesn't matter.
Dabney and John Randolph almost humanize them a little too much.
Right.
They seem like nastier people when they're off screen. Especially John Randolph. It's what a sweetie. So it just skipped a generation. Dabney Coleman's the only bad one.
John Randolph is famous for many things, of course, but I know him as the man that Jerry Stiller replaced as Frank Costanza.
Right.
He's in,
wow.
And on the DVD, they have the original cut of the episode so you can see his one performance and you can totally see what's wrong with it because he's just playing George's dad as this kind of old guy who is kind of doddering. He doesn't have an angry take on it.
The episode that he's in, did they reshoot it with Jerry Stiller later?
Yes, for syndication. Yeah. Yes.
Because on Hulu, it's the original cut too. I watched that first episode. I did all of Seinfeld recently.
They reshot it for syndication. You can watch on YouTube, side by side.
Wow.
All the actors came back and everything. It's crazy.
Because it is so bizarre. I mean, there's 3 castings of Jerry's dad right before they land on the right person, but you can watch those and none of them bump. And to see one performance of Frank Costanza not being Jerry Stiller is very upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's very weird. He's not good. I mean, no offense to him. He's good. He's usually good.
No offense to him.
Wow.
Fuck that performance, John Randolph.
Wait, one thing that they did cut from this. So there was a longer subplot about a serial killer killing people from rooftops.
Right, because Steve Zahn holds up the newspaper about it. Right.
Right. So there are dots of references to that, which is so funny to me because they kind of don't make sense. She really should have gotten rid of the whole thing. But I think it was the fear of meeting somebody online. She wanted to
it's the joke.
kind of.
Right.
Yeah. What if it's the serial killer? Maybe, whatever. So I I love that she had this like catfish thing in there, but then had to cut it, but it still kind of like remains in pieces with Steve Zahn, who does a good job with what he's given, which is very little, essentially.
And that script is like out there on the, like, if you want to read the original script, all the rooftop killer stuff is in it. Like,
that's amazing.
It's there. It's easy to find.
So she was like, look, I'm going to mash it all up. Barnes and Noble displacing West Side Books, The Summer of Sam, the internet. It's all going in one pot, baby.
And it is like, it isn't that much of a loss because like that's, I mean, a plot line that is really of a time and a place in 1998. You don't need it watching the film in 2020 because now we know, of course, if a woman meets a man on the internet, everything is safe. And nothing bad could possibly happen. Every man is being honest and fair and gentlemanly on the internet, and that behavior will carry into the real world. I know.
Yeah.
Such good writers.
There is, I really love that in the final version, though, the rooftop killer gets like its 2 references, and the final one is so funny when they wonder why he ghosted her on the date.
Yeah.
And then the cover of the New York Post is like, they caught the rooftop killer. And they're like, well, that explains it. And then they're done. They're done. They're like,
case
okay.
closed.
It's so funny.
So I got to say, I watched this. I think I'd only seen the movie twice before. I think I saw it on VHS when it came out. And then I saw the screening, the Dabney-less cut. So like,
yes.
This was, I mean, a fairly new viewing for me because A, that was almost a decade ago, and B, I was watching it without pop-up facts, but with extra Coleman and Randolph. And the previous time I'd watched it before that was VHS full screen. A, it's very bizarre that I didn't see this movie in theaters. Specifically, I was 9 or 10, but the bigger thing was, I, of course, grew up in New York City, downtown Griffey Nooms. So not quite my neighborhood, not quite my tempo, but still the city I love. My mother at this period in time was like all about protecting small businesses and fighting against chains taking over New York City. That was her entire fucking thing. She was trying to make a documentary about it for years. There was this guy, Reverend Billy, who's like a performance artist. I think he's still working. Right, who's like the Church of Stop Shopping. We would go to all of his rallies. Like my mom's entire life that she was bringing my brother and I into was all about like, we have to fight like Banana Republic. And Barnes and Noble was like a big target and protect small bookstores. I don't know why she didn't make us go see this movie in theaters. But I pointedly remember I only saw it at home when she rented it on video however many months later. I wonder if it's because she thought it was going to be flippant about that subject. But I remember watching it with her and both of us being impressed with like how sad the movie is in that aspect.
Yeah, well, it doesn't give up, but it doesn't solve her business problem. Like her store closes.
If she defeated him, it'd be like, oh, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, this is stupid.
But it's also, I mean, it's treated with a lot of weight. Like, it's not just like, well, this is sort of the thing you need to do to set up the movie. And I feel like the movie has a very similar approach to sort of the Vanishing New York that my mother did at the time.
Context. Come on.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So I was watching the Blu-ray of this movie, which is weirdly fucking packed, including all of Shop Around the Corner on a second disc, which I watched for this.
That's awesome.
And this amazing featurette where they're like Nora clips of her talking about the different locations they shot in and why they shot there.
That's so cool.
And like a bunch of featurettes and stuff. So I went deep watching everything on the disc last night. It seems like the origin of this movie was in the
I know
mid-90s.
what the origin of this movie was.
I was going to say
excuse
it!
me. Yeah, but I'm from the Upper West Side. It's Uptown Davy Sims' time to shine.
We all know that. You're from the Upper West Side. It's the only place you've ever lived. We all know that. You're Uptown Davy Sims.
So I grew up on 89th in Amsterdam.
Of course, and you lived there.
Yes.
Wow.
Until 1995.
Wow, this rivalry, I didn't know there was like a war between Uptown, Downtown.
Well, it's a basic fact that he lived on the Upper West Side and continued to do so. So in 1998, he probably saw this movie and, I don't know, 84th? The 84th Street AMC? I mean, then a Lowe's, right? You must have seen it there.
It was a Lowe's back then. But no, I saw this movie on a plane, actually. I remember that very clearly.
Well,
but I lived in Britain. I lived in Britain by the time this movie came out. Is this
you lived in Britain?
Out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right. I've heard that.
See, they know. Griffin, they know.
I realized that once again for the 8th episode in a row, I
forgot the bit.
I fucked up the bit that we were trying to do, which is I am confident in the fact that he lived in England and him being from the Upper West Side surprises me. That's what the bit's supposed to be, and I fucked it up, and here's a peek behind the curtain. And we're keeping it in and we're doubling it.
It actually did surprise me because I did think you were actually from England only. I didn't know you had this other place you were also from.
And that's why the bit would be funny if I had remembered it.
Cool. I did grow up. I lived on the Upper West Side till I was 9. I lived on 89th in Amsterdam. Yeah, all right. And there was, when I was a kid, this big controversy when the big Barnes & Noble, which is it still there? I believe it's still there on Broadway and 83rd.
Yeah.
Moved in, which was like basically a full city block, this giant fucking superstore. And it killed a lot of businesses, including West Side Books, which was like the nice neighborhood bookstore right around there. And so obviously, I mean, this is just, she's completely doing that. Like it is, it's in the Upper West Side. This is her Upper West Side movie. Like,
yes.
Harry Met Sally has some Upper West Side content, but it's kind of all over the city. Some of it's downtown, some of it's in the Village. It's, Katz's, the Met, right? But like, this movie has that feeling of the Upper West Side in the 90s where it's like, we don't need to leave these 40 blocks. Like everything I need is covered from like 59th to 110th. Like, you go to Zabar's, you go to Fairway, you go to the park. Like, that's all you got to do. Like, you've got your culture down in Lincoln Center. Like, that weird hermetic feeling of that neighborhood. And that's why everyone was so horrified by that Barnes & Noble, which, if you've been there, is colossal. And when I was a kid, was a total paradise because you could just run around. Like, for kids, it was unfortunately exactly what Joe Fox is promising.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what Joe Fox says.
Big chairs. Like, now I'm nostalgic for that fucking place. That place is going to go soon.
Chris Messina not knowing about the shoe books.
Messina. Sara Ramirez. There's so many people in this movie.
Everyone in this fucking movie. I mean, I said this to you last night, David. I was texting you and I was like, every single person in this cast is a ringer. And some of them are just like, oh, this person's a little overqualified to be doing this role at this time. And some of them are like, she fucking picked Chris Messina 10 years in advance.
Right. The casting on this movie is flawless. Everyone is perfect. Everyone is, even people who aren't people that are picked so smart. Like, everyone is perfect. Everyone is
Rush
perfect.
in the elevator. It's perfect.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God.
Katie Finneran as the nanny.
Oh, yeah.
Who plays the woman who comes into the store, the author who ditches them to do the book signing at Fox Books? She's incredible.
Who is the Seinfeld laugher?
Oh, what?
She is great.
She's the woman who laughs too much at Seinfeld.
Wow.
During his bit.
Yes, I forgot that. Jeez.
I forget who she is, but she's great.
Her name is Vianne Cox, I believe.
There we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Something that the movie is really smart about. Or maybe it's not smart. Maybe this is a stupid compliment. But I like the fact that you have the weight. It very clearly communicates the importance of this like small town thing and like how awful it was when these big box stores came and destroyed the neighborhood in a way. It's smart enough to recognize Meg Ryan's like privilege and her like sort of inherited wealth, because there's never a moment where the movie wants you to think that she's going to become destitute after this happens. And if anything, she's going to become even more wealthy because she's going to get this job as like a children's book editor. So like, the movie never makes you sympathize with her in that level. It's very much about the death of a community, not like the death of this woman's income. And I think it could have gone that way and you would have been like, shut up.
We always kind of mock the Meg Ryan character because what I love about her is that she's so specifically not perfect. She's like out here being like, me and my mother twirling and daisies are my favorite flower. Like she really is out of touch. So part of you kind of does look at Joe Fox and say like, I know we're supposed to think you're bad, but also like, you're doing what it's not this easy split. Like she dates the worst guy, right? Like she is dating Frank Navasky, who's based on a real person. And it's like, everyone is groaning at this guy, even though his intentions are supposed to be in the movie good. He's like trying to do all these things, but he's so up his own ass that you're like, if she's dating this idiot, like she is she's so far from perfect, you know?
It's one of those, like, the movie's very well balanced in that sense, that it finds a way to make the characters that seem unsympathetic sympathetic, and it finds a way to make the characters that are naturally sympathetic a little bit unlikable.
Yes, exactly. Oh, it's so good.
Frank is, I think, Frank DiGiacomo, right? The guy who used to run the transom at the Observer. I mean, when I was a kid, I watched this movie and I was like, that's what my ceiling is. I'm going to maybe get to write for the Observer and be kind of a, pain in the neck who's a little self-satisfied.
You'll be that nut at the Observer.
When he's at the party and Parker Posey says she's read his piece and he goes, wait, you read it? I really didn't expect people you put stuff out there and you don't know if people will read it. I was like, this is my life. This is Twitter.
Which is a scene that's ultimately like lifted from When Harry Met Sally. Like the shock at being read.
The partner swap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kinnear in this, I feel like at the time, he's in this movie. He's in a couple others around. This is post As Good as It Gets, right? Griffin, this is post his Oscar nom.
Right, and most of his other roles after this, around this time, are...
He's the third guy who gets dumped or whatever, or the villain or whatever, right? Like, he's the Baxter, right?
Right, then the next year is Mystery Men, where he's like the Baxter of superheroes.
Right, 100%. And like, he's not quite playing the Bill Pullman role in this. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different vibe.
Well, can I throw out some context?
Yes.
Because it's interesting, David. You were so fast to trump me with explaining the context of where this movie came from, but somehow you didn't cover the things that I was going to say.
Well, I just wanted to talk about the Barnes & Noble.
Well, great work. Congratulations. 10 profundity points. It's Delia and Nora Ephron go see As Good as It Gets. And they go, fuck, that guy would be good for that part. But he's clearly about to blow up. I mean, he was clearly like getting the best reviews, was going to get an Oscar nomination. Do you think there's any way he would take this role? They offer it to Kinnear, and Kinnear says, I'd love to do it, but as it kind of feels like, the ending was supposed to be Meg Ryan dumps him after the argument at the movie theater. That was supposed to be the ending of it. And he said, I feel like I've seen that in so many movies. This thing where like the guy reveals himself to be a little bit too much of a pill. There's some brutal breakup. What is the more traditional like Bill Pullman kind of role?
Right.
He's a drip or he's an asshole or whatever it is. And he was like, can we do something a little more modern? It's entirely a Greg Kinnear pitch. The scene where they both... Yep.
I love that.
I had no idea.
That's Kinnear. Kinnear said, I'll do the movie if this is how my character line ends.
I love that scene, too.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
You wouldn't even think to write that. It almost feels unfinished, but then when you watch it, you're like, oh, this is great.
Absolutely. Isn't that incredible, though, that like Ephron was like, oh, you're right, that's better. And it feels like such an Ephron scene, but that was Greg Kinnear being like, these are the terms of me taking the part. I'll do it if you do this.
Right.
There's also just no guilt. Like in the beginning when they're both kind of hiding their computer activity, you're like, well, nothing has really happened yet. Is this emotional cheating? We're bordering, but like not quite. Mm-hmm. So you don't really get them cast in that like cheater realm.
Yeah.
You kind of just, because you have these girlfriend boyfriends who are so kind of annoying and they're not right and they're all kind of like about to break up in a weird way. It's like kind of a magical thing that Nora and Delia are able to do by making you not hate them for kind of being a little shady with their partners.
Well, even the scene when they're watching the Jane Addams show.
Yeah.
And he's flirting with her.
And Meg Ryan is like very like openly recognizing that he is flirting with her and that she's flirting back. You can sense this like relief in her. She's like, okay, I'm not the only one. Like, we're both doing this. Like, it somehow manages to be cute. So much of this movie is like towing the line between like, these people are fucked up and these people are really, really sweet. So
and she is so fully anticipating the reveal that he's with Jane Addams. And when he's like, no. But do you think?
Yeah.
She's so on board to give him advice and be like, no, it seems like the two of you would fit well together.
I think also one of my favorite lines, which maybe one of my favorite Nora Ephron lines ever is yours is the only show I do watch, which has so much to do with Greg's delivery, but still, yours is the only show I do watch.
Is this the thank your? They do that thank your. Okay.
Thank your. Thank your, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank your.
Bring, bring. Bring, bring.
One more call. All right, picking up.
Dun, dun, dun. Hello.
Hello.
You've got mail.
Oh, what mail do I have? Haven't heard that.
No,
mail.
I'm just kidding. It's me, the voice of AOL.
That's. I believe your name is Elwood Edwards.
No, that's the name of the voice actor who plays me. I am the character.
So you're the actual voice of AOL, and you're saying that the guy who did the voice of AOL was just playing you. That's what you're saying here?
He gave me life, but I have now formed into an artificial intelligence.
Well, hey, it's the 21st century. All kinds of crazy stuff is happening. What's up, voice of You've Got Mail?
People aren't using AOL that much anymore. So
Sure,
I
it's
had
gone a
to
little downhill.
find a way to keep myself occupied by gaining sentience. David,
Yeah.
I've got problems.
What's your problem?
I have become a conscious being, much like Robin Williams in the film Bicentennial Man. I am trying to earn the status of human being.
That's going to be an interesting journey for you to go on.
I programmed a penis for myself, but it will not get erect. David, I've got ED.
Well, don't be embarrassed by that. That's actually a very common issue that men face, and sometimes they don't want to talk about it, but 40% of men by age 40 struggle from not being able to get and maintain an erection.
I think I'm probably in my early 30s by now.
You know, I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to realize your humanity, that's part of humanity sometimes. And you shouldn't turn to any weird solutions or do nothing. You can turn to medicine and science and check out Hims, okay? Hims.com. It's a one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, sexual wellness for men.
David, are you saying that you've got Hims?
Well, Hims is, I've got Hims, sure. It's got well-known generic equivalents to name brand prescriptions to help you combat ED, prescription solutions backed by science and made more affordable. You can see results where other treatments fall short and stop worrying about multiple in-doctor office visits. There's no painful injections, and it's all done online. You answer some questions about your medical history. If approved, the products are shipped directly to your door. I'm not sure where you live, but, mostly this is just going to be online, which I feel like is going to be fine for you. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's where I live. The internet. I keep on trying to visit a doctor, but they all seem to have ad blockers in place. Online consultation. That sounds great.
You can try Hims today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to forhims.com/blank. That's FORHIMS.com/blank for hims.com/blank. Prescriptions products are subject to medical provider approval and require an online consultation with a medical provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. See website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went in person to the doctor's office or a pharmacy. So just remember, that's forhims.com/blank.
David, you've got a lot of insight into this issue.
Hey, I'm glad to help.
For a little more context, as often seems to be the case in Nora Ephron's career, despite the fact that she was already very well established before she starts directing movies and had numerous hits, most of her movies seem to come out of another rare, powerful woman in Hollywood at that point in time setting the movie up. So so much of her career is like Amy Pascal and Linda Obst, and this one is Lauren Shuler Donner. Mm-hmm. It's like these female producers or executives who had risen in a time that was not very hospitable to women in the industry. Unlike now, where the internet is safe for all women and women are all ruling Hollywood, and it's great, and girl boss, #yay. But everything's perfect. We fix the world. Lauren Shuler Donner, who mostly, obviously is married to Richard Donner.
Person.
Right.
Yes.
And even if you look at her career prior to X-Men and everything, it's mostly pretty masculine films.
She did a lot of, Richard Donner movies, right? So that, but Free Willy, she did Dave.
Oh, I love Dave.
But I'm also looking here Assassins, the Lethal Weapon movies, Any Given Sunday. I mean, yes. After this, she starts to make some more female-driven films, but then she also just makes a lot of X-Men movies.
She gets sort of tied into the X-Men thing. Yeah,
totally. But this is, I think, Warner Brothers reaches out to her. They've merged with Turner, so they've just inherited a lot of the Turner library, which includes so many classics, and Warner Brothers is now, with all these new films they've acquired, aggressively trying to figure out which ones would make good remakes. So Lauren Shuler Donner looks at the library and goes, Shop Around the Corner. That thing has legs. It's been already remade once. It was a musical. Like, and that seems like something. It's based
on something. Yeah, right. There's so many versions of it. Yeah.
Right. So then she said, that seems like a good Nora Ephron project, reaches out to Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron goes, oh, Delia and I, that's one of our favorite movies ever and one of our favorite musicals ever. And the two of them go, let's take this thing, which obviously is sort of just like potent and primal enough that it's worked already in a couple different forms, and figure out how to put as much of our own interest into it as possible. All the Upper West Side stuff. It's exactly what you said, Bobby, which is their big thesis for this movie. The thing they said that they wanted to do was New York is so often, even in movies where New York is a character, as we know, New York is often above the title, and it's almost like a character in the movie itself. Mm-hmm. But it's often treated as this very overwhelming, kind of hostile, massive thing. And they wanted to make the movie about how New York City is a series of small towns. That any sort of like 6-block neighborhood in New York City does feel like a small town, where you have your local places and the people know you and all of that sort of stuff. So that was one of the things they were bringing to it that they thought they could update the film with in a modern way. And then the other thing was the book angle. Like that the two of them specifically loved children's books, that Delia had written a bunch of children's books at this time, that they were like, the loss of city books was like fresh to them. And every previous version of this story, She Loves Me, Shop Around the Corner, and In the Summertime, they're co-workers. Like the other three versions are centered around they work at the same store and they hate each other. And as opposed to what you're saying, Bobby, where if the shop closes, Meg Ryan is not going to be destitute in this movie. In the other versions, it's very much, this is in an economic crisis. If people lose their jobs, they might become homeless. So much of the rivalry between the two characters is they're fighting for who becomes the most valuable employee of this store. Because if one of them nudges out the other, their entire life might be ruined. And she brings to it the whole element of, it's rivals in different companies within the same business, which is almost a little bit of a Ninochka. I mean, she's pulling from like a different Lubitsch movie, which is, here are two people who are opposite sides of the coin, don't realize they get along that well. And then the sort of secret correspondence element, which only makes more sense in an email age than it did in a letter age.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy to me. It's still crazy to me that Delia and Nora, who were born in the 40s, they're my parents.
Yeah.
How did these two women write an internet movie? To this day, do not understand. It is still to this day difficult to write movies about people on the internet, people texting, people doing anything with computers. How do you get somebody to be interesting behind a computer? That to me is insane that they figured it out. How did they do it? I still do not know. And the other, what's so amazing about it is maybe the reason why this movie is so good is because of how little they really know about the intricacies of online communication. Mm-hmm. They're just like, let's just say it's letter writing. And when the IM pops up, that's as far as we're getting into this computer shit.
Which is why it doesn't feel dated, even to this day, because all they're really doing is emailing, and we still email. So they never get into the weeds of what, like, we don't see that. Like, if we had seen the AOL interface a lot, or if we had seen how the internet actually worked, then we would have been a little like, oh, wow, this didn't age well. Right. But all you see is the email box, really. And like
they don't have phones they don't have phones where the emails pop up. A great part is when he ghosts her. He ghosts her and she's walking home and she doesn't have any access to even say, where are you? Or you didn't come, or did it? She has to go home, open the computer, check the mail, shut the computer. Like that to me, that's just, it's so lucky almost that it was this time that they chose to do this. Absolutely. Because it would not work outside of that context.
Well,
and like,
even just this title. I mean, do you remember this movie, like seeing the trailer and going, fuck, that's a slam dunk title.
Yeah.
Like, what a good idea. And 2 years later, the title wouldn't work. Like 2 years later, it was overplayed. And 3 years after that, AOL was sort of bombing.
Yeah.
And that AOL let them use it free. I mean, obviously, why would they not? But they let them use it, and that it became such a catchphrase, and it still has meaning nostalgically to us as like a generation.
Right. It's such a perfect snapshot. I mean, it's also, there's this long feature on the Blu-ray that I think is ported over from the 10th anniversary DVD. So it's Hanks and Ephron and Ryan sitting in a very nice living room on white couches, drinking coffee, like in 2008. And then they cut in talking head interviews with Delia and Lauren Shuler Donner, and they're talking about how the movie got made. And they're all sort of saying, like, 10 years out, how surprising it is that the internet has grown into what it has, but also that the film doesn't feel like a relic. Like, it has aged so much better than a movie like The Net, which is so explicitly about, like, we understand the internet. And everything in that movie feels so fucking dumb now. And this movie, it was surprising for someone who doesn't seem very, like, computer literate. Even sitting on that couch 10 years later, Nora's, like, understanding of the sociological impact of the internet was so on point. And I think it circles back to the food thing. It's like her movies up until Julie and Julia are not explicitly food movies, even though she is known for being such a foodie in her real life. But the thing she really understands that she put into all of her films is the sociological power that food has. You know, what it means to have a meal with somebody, or to have someone make a meal for you, or where you're eating it, or what you're eating, or these sort of, as we were saying, like the social decorum around food.
Yeah.
And I think she just was one of those people who understood those things so well that even in 1998 or even in 1996, when she's writing the script or whatever, she understood how the internet was going to change human interaction.
Well, she also, never forget, one of my favorite Nora Ephron things is kind of later in her life, she started a HuffPo blog about divorce.
Blogger,
I mean, she to even know how to start a blog. Like, I know that she obviously had help. She was friends with Ariana Huffington, I'm sure. And like Ariana was like, Nora, we got to get you back on the internet or on the internet. But
a lot of writers at her level would have really looked down on the fact that they would be able to blog her, and she embraced
and
it.
Alec Baldwin were the two people
That's the one
blogging. When I worked at AOL, it was like those two people, like it was shocking that even they were doing it. But Nora always got how important, I mean, even just making Julie and Julia into a movie from start to finish, like how cool blogs were and how important they were and how to translate the idea of a personal weblog into narrative or whatever. It is
particularly fascinating that Alec Baldwin was blogging, because that was after he had said goodbye to public life. He had fully retired from public life, and then we never saw him again.
Yeah, we still haven't seen him since. It's actually wild.
I wish he could pop up and tell us he's okay and then punch someone in the face.
Oh my God.
Let him play his words with friends. Griffin.
Yeah.
He's busy fighting for a parking spot or whatever he was doing last time he got in a fight.
I gotta say, I heard a story that Alec Baldwin and his 17 children with Hilaria were applying to move into a different co-op because they needed more space with their
Didn't they already
ever-growing
combine like
rabbit
8 apartments?
Yeah. I wasn't going to say that, but
I think that this was when they were looking for the apartment before that.
Yeah. They bought a friend of ours a childhood apartment and combined it with the floor below it or above it. I forget the details.
Really?
But
Was it the building they were already living in?
No, I think they bought, I don't think they were already living in it. I think they bought it and the one next door to it. And so he's like, every time Alec Baldwin posts a photo of him, like with his young children, he's like, that's my childhood bedroom. It's very weird.
The gossip I had heard was that around that time when they were looking for the new apartment or apartments, they kept on getting rejected by different co-op boards because they'd be like, we don't want him fucking punching a guy and the paparazzi's taking pictures right outside our door. Like every time he has an altercation like that, it's outside his front door of his building. And all these buildings were like, we don't want to get dragged into that shit.
Well, or it's on a plane because he wants to play Words with Friends. Let's be clear.
David, you are muted.
Oh, what the fuck? No, something's going on
David's
with me.
muted.
My headphones have been acting weird.
David's quite muted.
Buster Keaton routine right now. He is talking very empathetically with his hands. We can't hear anything he's saying. You're fully muted, David.
I'm not. My headphones.
There you are.
Can you hear me now?
You're back. Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
back.
Zoom had to restart my audio.
Oh.
Also, not to be depressing about it, but I'm wondering, when you guys were watching this, let's put into context right now, I've never been more depressed.
Agreed.
I've truly never been more depressed.
You mean about what the movie's saying?
No, about New York City, about looking at New York City in an idyllic way right now.
New York City in the fall, like everything they say about New York City in the fall it cuts even deeper than it ever has.
Yes.
Now, they CGI'd those falling leaves. Did you know that, Bobby?
Wow. No, I didn't know that.
If you can listen to the commentary which is Nora and Lauren Shuler Donner, the greatest double act in
I have the
90s
Blu-ray Griffin's been talking about, but I have not listened to the commentary.
Yeah, Bobby, we got to listen to this commentary.
They're like, all of the fall stuff is CGI, baby. We were shooting this in the summer or whatever. You know, it's all like, there's a lot of tidbits like that.
Look, it's May 2020. This is a time of great political turmoil. I really don't want to get canceled. Okay, in a moment of great sensitivity, I really don't want to get canceled. But I texted David this last night, and I feel strong enough in my convictions here that I feel like I need to repeat it on mic.
Go ahead.
Consequences be damned. I heart NY.
You Apple it?
I Apple it. I was watching this movie last night, and Lindsey, just like you were saying, and this has been a running thing in all these Nora Ephron episodes, all of which we've been recording in quarantine. I almost cry in any one of these movies with the way she photographs New York City, feeling a loss for a city that I currently still live in. And it's not just the vanishing New York element of, a lot of these businesses are gone from 20 years ago. It's literally just seeing people walk around the city I love without masks on.
The opening of this movie is like beautiful. It's like
beautiful.
Everything I love about living here is walking around, holding a coffee, and just looking around.
It's so funny. You're forgetting that, of course, the actual opening of this movie, Bobby, is a pixelated 90s Warner Brothers logo.
Zoom into the earth.
Yeah, so please don't forget that.
Which is great.
The moment the cranberries start, that's
baby.
it. That's it. And there is.
We haven't even gotten into the soundtrack. We haven't even gotten to the soundtrack of this iconic film.
But Nora gives you a pass, for feeling the sappy, sentimental feelings that you sometimes feel about this place, and it makes you recognize that like it's okay to think those things because like look around you. This is a perfectly acceptable feeling. This place rules.
Yes.
Yes. This rules.
Absolutely.
This is a movie about the New York, the Upper West Side, the Manhattan, whatever, that she loves passing into memory. Like, even though she's making it just as it's happening, she knows what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm getting a phone call. 1 second.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Hollywood Sims over here.
When What's-Her-Face complains about having to maybe move to Brooklyn and then Steve Zahn says that he has a 6-bedroom for $450 a month, I was like, I can't. What New York is this?
Yeah.
So much fucking shit going on. Jesus.
She is great. What is her name? Heather Burns.
Heather Burns. I know her best from Bored to Death. Remember she was in Bored to Death?
She was Congeniality. His wife.
Right, and she's in so many Sandra Bullock movies, right? She became like a weird Sandra Bullock good luck charm because she's in like 2 Weeks Notice as well, I think.
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah.
You know who's also so good?
I know you're going to say.
Dave Chapelle.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Gene Stapleton, but yeah.
Oh
no.
Well, they're both. Would we say equal? They're both giving equal.
Because
performances.
Well, because Lady Gaga's iconic album Chromatica came out last night, we did a listening party for our fans, and we were listening to Gaga, A Star Is Born, and I was thinking about A Star Is Born, and then I was watching this, and I was thinking Dave Chapelle, like so good in A Star Is Born, just incredible. What a great actor. And this was his one of his early movies, I would say, for sure.
I think this and Half Baked are the same year, maybe.
Okay.
He's so natural. Like, they kind of put him in a weird place as a character. Like, he's not quite fleshed out, but like, he still is so able to say things like call her hot many times, say that she's not a dog so many times. And somehow it's like, it's weird, but it's not the worst.
No. And I think, like, look, this is an ultimate example of that thing I'm kind of obsessed with that I always bring up on this podcast, where big A-list movie star casts an up-and-coming actor 20 years younger than them to play their best friend to make them seem a little more modern and current.
Yeah.
Yes.
But and very often, it is a person of color to make the white A-list star feel a little more hip as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
They're used for that sort of like modern cachet.
Right.
But he is so good in this that somehow you actually kind of buy that they're friends. And like,
well, you also kind of buy that Tom Hanks's character doesn't really have a lot of close friends, and so
his only close friend is his assistant, and
his friend is this guy who's doing the construction.
That's
why it works.
Right. So it's almost like it's not crazy that he'd be like working out with him at Equinox or wherever not Equinox, but like pre-Equinox, whatever, watching the TV or something. Like it's not that crazy.
But I did like watching this made me wish, and I understand 1,000 the bigger, crazier things happen in his career and he, adjusted accordingly. But I wish he were in more movies, even if it was just a role like this or a role like Star is Born. He is such a good actor. And like he talks about, I think in his Inside the Actors Studio, how he didn't just want to be a stand-up who would then appear in movies and just sort of be doing his routine, how he was like taking acting classes when he was 18 years old because he recognized that the stand-ups were best in movies, had an acting background, weren't just, I'm funny on stage, I'll know how to do this. And Dave Chapelle has genuine chemistry, friend chemistry with Tom Hanks here. It's not just that he's funny. I mean, he is a really fucking skilled actor in a part that's not actually demanding that much of him.
I also get a sense that Tom Hanks is very good at creating friend chemistry with almost any person he's ever worked with on film.
That's definitely part of it. I do think being opposite Tom Hanks is about the best.
It's quite easy, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
It's believable that both Tom and Meg Ryan wouldn't really have that many friends. Like Meg has her boyfriend, and she has her mom's
has her coworkers.
best friend. She has her coworkers and Birdie.
She has inherited her mom's best friend along with her mom's business. She has nothing that she made on her own. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's what this movie is kind of quietly about, right? It's like, even though her life is so cute and she's got this great place.
It's not hers.
And like,
no, it's not hers.
It's like she is kind of living this sort of, it's like, who is this person? Like even her apartment she probably inherited.
Yeah.
When she says, no, maybe nobody will remember me, but people remember my mom and they loved her.
Yes.
Like that is the bleakest sentiment. Oh my fucking God.
This is my whole take. I was saying this to Griffin last night because we have been talking about going through this miniseries. It's like the big Nora hits are the movies that people think of as more like these sort of like lovely, slightly sappy kind of like, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, Julie and Juliet, right? Like
True Love, the right people ultimately find each other. What people think of as the Nora Ephron movies when they talk about Nora Ephron movies.
Bomb are the ones where she tries to go kind of acidic and like Mixed Nuts, Lucky Numbers, Bewitched,
The ones that are closer to her writing as a humorist. I mean, the stuff that she made her bones, right.
This is kind of, I think, the salty sweet movie. You just have to sort of be aware that these characters are all a little sad and like that the ending is nice. Sure, they get together. I hoped it would be you, but I don't know, that it just feels like something sort of dying in this movie.
And there's a harder edge to their fighting than I remembered there being. It's not
he's a jerk.
Cute.
He's an asshole,
Right. Yes.
Yeah, he's a total asshole. When he humiliates her, like when he goes into the cafe and she's waiting and he just rips into her, like that is probably the cruelest thing you could do to somebody.
Yes.
I could that's unforgivable in a way,
It's why the ending is, the ending is, you got your beautiful Summer of the Rainbow cover happening, but she breaks down into tears because she's like, oh my God, you were so mean to me. And I knew I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be you so badly, but you were such an it's sad. She's remembering all of these things. Like it's like it put a magnifying glass over like the sadness of her life.
Yes.
And she's like, thank God I have this happy ending, but oh my God, what a terrible trajectory we had.
There's a version where she's like, whoa, wait a second. So you stood me up and then came and visited me to torment me? Like, can we go through a couple of events before we kiss?
Right, she's crying not because it's him, but because she wanted it to be him. There's something self-destructive
it's so sad
about them being attracted to each other. Yeah.
And think about the kind of the through line about niceness and meanness. It's like he's too mean, she's too nice. Like he's teaching her to be mean and she's teaching him to be nice. And like that's like, how do we meet in the middle? But ultimately, when they're both mean, it's like it's not actually that cute. Like no one is really doing meanness in like the way that they think they're doing meanness. I think like her clapbacks are like even worse than his original meanness in a way. Like, I don't know, especially because of the types of people they are, which is kind of both a little lonely.
Do you think Hanks wanted to be like, like in Sleepless in Seattle, I'm such a saint. Like, I want to play this as a little more of a jerk. Like, that's my read on this guy.
I hope. I think so, because I think he has to. His hurdle to being mean is big. He has to really try to be mean.
That 10 years later retrospective thing, they talk a lot about the Cafe Lalo scene, which there are pretty much only 3 scenes in this movie, because it really uses Shop Around the Corner and the play that was based on, and the 2 later versions, the musical and the movie musical. It pretty much just uses that as a springboard. It takes a lot of new directions from it. But there's 3 scenes that exist almost verbatim in all 3 movie versions, which are the scene with the friend, the Dave Chapelle scene where he takes a look at her, and like down to specific wordings, she almost has the same coloring as. That line exists in all 3 movies. Wow.
Which is such a weird line in context when you hear it for Dave Chapelle to say.
Which that's where I started to go like, man, Chappelle's fucking good in this movie, because I have
the fact that he can pull off saying she has the same coloring as that woman, Kathleen Kelly. Like, that is not how that's not how a person would say she looks like Kathleen Kelly.
And if you look up the actor who played the best friend role in Shop Around the Corner, it's like an older Eastern European man with a mustache who's from Ninochka. And that line sounds normal coming out of him. And recognizing, having seen them in such close succession, like, oh my God, Chappelle's about to do this word for word almost, as if it were from the original script. How is he going to pull this off as an actor? Pulls it off. That seems almost identical. And she said she picked Cafe Lalo because in the other versions of it, it's that thing where even in the original, it's like the cafe is elevated. So the friend is able to walk up the stairs and the guy in the street level isn't able to see it. Then the cafe scene itself is very similar without being word for word. It's beat for beat, very similar. And then the scene where he visits her when she's sick is very, very similar, beat for beat.
Which is truly one of our favorites to rag on. That's
Meg balling out.
Fully off the off the rails.
I'm sick.
Right. The explanation for that is she likes that scene being in the previous movie. Yeah. But like, need to put it in
Meg is so, the kookiness is so pronounced in Harry Met Sally and Sleepless, and in this it's a little more muted. Totally. Like even though she is still a kook, as we've been discussing, like, it's not really there in the same flibbertigibbity kind of way.
This movie's so much more honest about how sad she is.
Yes.
Like Sleepless in Seattle makes vague references to it, and one of them is more of like a joke, but the scene that I always think of as like a really sad moment in Sleepless in Seattle, that's like my favorite line in Sleepless in Seattle, is when she's trying on the wedding dress and it tears and she goes, "It's a sign," and her mom goes, "You don't believe in signs." And it's just like, even when she's trying to open up, her mom is like, no, this isn't you. That's kind of the extent of the window into her sadness that you get in Sleepless in Seattle, as opposed to just her being like overtly crazy the entire time. But like in You've Got Mail, she is like a persistent refrain of this movie is that she's so lonely and she misses her mother so much. And she understands that she will never have the impact that her mother did. And her entire neighborhood was built up around this, like, the true piazza. Like Tom Hanks says that he built the piazza, but it's like she had the original piazza in this neighborhood, and she's like, I'll never build anything. And that's like that's so persistent throughout the whole movie, and that doesn't exist in either of the other ones. Like
No,
when
I-
I'm looking at the like just quotes, and I forgot this part where Frank Navasky is reciting something to get her pumped up for something, and he says, "You are a lone reed standing tall, waving boldly in the corrupt sands of commerce." And she goes, "I'm a lone reed?" And he goes, "Yes, you're alone." Like he's like telling her, like, you're alone. Like she lives with this man, and he's like, you are alone.
but on a fundamental level, you are alone in this world.
It's so bleak.
There's also The Godfather, which is a classic Efron thing, like Casablanca and Harry Met Sally and The Dirty Dozen.
Remember.
She loves to reference these like movies that men love, but like there's the repeated like, you got to go to the mattresses, right? But she never does. She never goes to war. Like she doesn't even try. That's not even a plot.
Well, she goes on New York lawn and does her little.
She goes to the press. Her war is that she begs her boyfriend to write an op-ed or whatever.
Yeah.
That actually
and she's
does
like, would
have
that be a conflict of interest? And I immediately out loud was like, yes. What? You can't do that.
He says yes too, and then he says no.
And he's like, oh no, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just love how immediately that doesn't work too.
Yeah.
Like isn't it the next scene? Birdie's like, no growth year over year.
Yeah, Meg Ryan's like, no difference. It's done
no
nothing.
difference.
And then you're basically just cutting to them at Stapleton's house where they're like, yeah, well, the decision is no more store.
But it's too real. That is such a real thing, though. Like raising money for a cause and everyone getting fully around it and getting so into it and giving all their money. And it doesn't make a difference because a year later, it's the same issue or, nothing has changed. The economy hasn't changed. Like the situation hasn't changed. So it's just like, it is actually a truly like a very compact lesson in that, where it's like everyone's willing to rally around and does really care, but cannot focus their entire lives around saving this business that is no longer a business that can stay alive.
And it's like the author who's like, I need to promote my book. Of course I'm going to do it at Fox Books. Like, that's where I'm going to get more readers.
Right. There's a very earned cynicism and sort of like honest cynicism to the idea that, everyone loves the emotional idea of this store existing. But also everyone loves saving money on books and being able to get a coffee at the same time.
Yeah.
Like as much as they're invested in the idea of shop around the corner, they cannot turn down the convenience of Fox Books.
Yeah.
And just the idea that 22 years on, we miss Borders. And we love those Barnes and Nobles that are still standing, like the one in Union Square, the one in the Upper West Side. We're like, those are great places. Like, they're part of the firmament of New York.
Right. And if anything, those stores are dying and little bookstores are coming back. So you have now the reverse. How would Nora even deal with this? I'm so curious how she would respond to the idea that it's like, now it's the reverse. The curation of the books is so much more valuable to people that Barnes and Noble is not really a thing anymore because people are buying books online when they want to buy kind of cheap used books.
She'd reopen a store.
She will,
In the sequel, she reopens the store.
Books are magic.
I was just thinking about, and Jean Stapleton is so good in this movie. Like she feels like a true gift. You feel very privileged to have had this performance in this movie.
Every time she appears on the screen, you want to say to Nora, "Thank you so much. How did you know? It's just what I wanted."
It's so gentle and funny.
When she's like this from behind the thing.
But when she walks up and but when she walks past the window display of the author at Fox Books, just to continue our last conversation, like she's not angry.
No,
she's sort of like, she's like, well, we knew this was bound to happen. Like she's not upset. She's just very
it's not personal,
sad.
It's business. Yeah.
I mean, you can tell this woman she's a volunteer. You can tell she's volunteering.
Oh yeah. Yes. Birdie is not getting a check.
No.
She just knows the software.
Bring.
Oh, okay. I'm accepting the Zoom call.
Buzz!
Oh, Buzz. Are you Woody?
Yeah, I'm looking for Buzz.
I can't quite place this voice though. Is this the Woody from Toy Story?
Yes, I said yes. I'm looking for Buzz. We have to get back to Andy's room, Buzz.
Sure. Well, Buzz isn't here.
You seem very confused and tired, Buzz. We've gone through this before. I've Zoom bombed you before and told you we gotta get back to Andy's room.
I can help you. And I'm not really sure what else to tell you because this is a Zoom call and we're all in different places. But I hope you can get back to Andy's room.
Wait, you're saying you can't help me get back to Andy's room? Could you help me with another problem, Buzz?
Okay, all right. What's your other problem? Maybe I can help you with the other problem.
It's my plastic, Buzz.
Sure. You've got a sort of smooth plastic head,
but it's too oily, Buzz. I need some sort of skincare routine.
I see. Of course, even toys might be neglecting their skin. Right?
We can't all call in the cleaner the way Al McWiggin did to come in with the little Q-tips and clean us off, Buzz.
Wow, I did not know his last name. That's a real deep pull. Well, here's a cold hard truth for you, Woody. Your skin has needs. And if you want it to look as good as possible for as long as possible, you got to address those needs. You might not know where to start.
Cold hard truth I'm made out of cold hard plastic, Buzz.
Exactly. Look, there's a company that's taken all the guesswork out of it for you. It's Lumen, who's on a mission to give men the amazing skin they deserve through high-quality, expert-created products that are delivered right to your door.
And I'm a man, Buzz, and that's helpful that it's straight to the door of Andy's room because I can't leave the room. You're just
gonna have to put Andy's room, like, Woody, care of Andy, something like that.
Andy's room.
All the products from Lumen are formulated specifically for men's skin and are made to target skin issues with maximum efficacy using top-notch ingredients like charcoal, green tea extract, and vitamin C. It's not just about looking good.
So it would work on Potato Head, but not on Mrs. Potato Head. Buzz.
I suppose so. It's about feeling good. You need good skin health, especially as you get older, to prevent long-term damage. Griff and I have been using Lumen skin products. Comes in a nice little drawstring bag.
It's been great. I mean, it's these tiny little containers. It's a very sort of easy process. And, you get the skincare routine that matches your skin type the best. They have different products.
Yeah. And
oily skin, combo, dry.
I'm a dummy about this stuff. I really don't know where to begin. And so I just filled out a little quiz on Lumen. They sent me the stuff I needed. It was very, very easy.
You're a dummy. I'm a ragdoll, Buzz.
Exactly.
A pull-string doll, Buzz.
I'm not Buzz, but you deserve to look and feel your best. And here's where you start. Go to lumenskin.com/check to get a 1-month free trial of everything you need to start your skincare journey at home. That's lumenskin.com/check to get your first month free. lumenskin.com/check.
That's very helpful, Buzz. Now, would you please help me get back to Andy's room?
Yeah, sure. I'll get right on that. What do we think of Zahn? We haven't mentioned Zahn.
I love Zahn. I'll take any Zahn I can get.
He's very, very, very good.
Especially this time period. He is so in the pocket of just like my favorite kind of character actor. And I put Heather Burns into this too, where it's like, you can give them one scene and without stealing too much focus, they somehow find a way to make everything interesting. They're both just kind of innately interesting as performers. Their energy is bizarre. Their voices are bizarre. But they're also intelligent actors. Like they know how to underplay stuff. They know when to take their moments. They're both really good actors.
This is the same year as Out of Sight, which he's awesome in.
He's such a good foil to Meg Ryan's character too. Like she needs to be grounded by people who are like living a real life, and these people are living a real life. I
had a false Kazam like memory that Zahn and Burns ended up together at the end of this movie, and watching it, I think I just want that to happen. I think I just did /fic in my head.
You also want Navasky and Parker Posey to get together. Like somehow you want them just to switch.
I remember that happening too in my head.
I feel like we can just declare it canon that probably happens.
She definitely gives him a book deal.
And Parker Posey is, of course, in Mixed Nuts. She's the rollerblader along with Jon Stewart.
Right.
So she had worked with Nora before.
And apparently her and Nora were good friends. Like they were actually social friends.
That could not make more sense.
Right?
Two New York women.
I have not seen Mixed Nuts since renting it with my family soon after it came out, and everyone was like, what the fuck was that? And I was like, that movie sucks. And I never gave it another thought.
Very bizarre.
This is, when she's in this, I feel like she's just fully the queen of indie cinema, right? Like she's been like Doom Generation, Kicking and Screaming, Suburbia, Basquiat, House of Yes, Waiting for Guffman. Like that's all leading up to this. And I feel like it's still a novelty for her to be in a mainstream movie when it's like, oh, Parker Posey, like the coolest girl.
If you guys haven't seen the remake of High Fidelity TV show, which is shockingly good, I don't even know how I
have not watched it.
Oh my, this has no right to be good. It is literally should be against the law for it to be good, but it's fantastic. And there's an episode that you could just watch this episode where Parker Posey is in it and she plays this New York City Upper West Side woman who is selling her like shitty husband's records to them. And she is so good. And it really reminded me of this woman. It's like the future of this woman whose name I'm now. What is her name when you got mail? What's her name? What's her character's name?
Patricia Eden.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Clearly
Patricia.
I'm
Yeah.
Patricia. Oh, because Patricia makes coffee nervous.
Patricia makes coffee
The
nervous.
best line.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I always think of that High Fidelity woman as the future Patricia. Like that is just what she became, that
And
woman.
Hank said like so perfectly, she's perfect casting and her performance is perfect because from the moment you see them on screen together, you're like, oh, this is a temporary thing.
Yeah, but it makes sense that they would have like found a way to connect at some point and say, "Hey, this sort of works on paper."
They're both cynical in the same kind of way,
right.
in the way that Kinnear and Ryan make sense on paper. But they're like, unfortunately, we just don't love each other. But it works on paper.
Do you think Nora's like the movie's too cute as it is with the little, with the email? Like maybe I shouldn't have everyone else linking up at the end. I don't know.
I thank God she didn't. The movie's long enough. We don't need like the two butlers getting together. We don't need it. The babysitter and the valet get together. Like we don't need it.
Nancy Myers is starting, around the same time as this movie's coming out, and she's like, "Yeah, baby, everyone's gonna be together at the end."
I agree with that. It's better for the film. That having been said, Jeffrey Wells style, I would like to ask the ghost of Nora Ephron to quietly send me the footage of Steve Zahn and Heather Burns fucking on a soundstage. Not private
because they
videos.
filmed it.
Yes, they filmed
it.
They filmed it. Bobby, you were going to talk about the elevator scene.
I just love the elevator scene. It's just I think that it's something that Nora does very well, which is take a situation that seems very contrived and add a lot of humanity to it and turn it into something actually memorable and sort of very profound.
Yeah.
Like something about like getting trapped in an elevator with essentially cliches like the Upper West Side witchy rich woman with no personality other than the fact that I have a small dog and I'm rich. And the
Michael Badaluccio, we haven't shouted him out yet,
so
but
good.
and the fact that like it's weird to see like this like Upper West Side woman like Nora Ephron like sort of write people who were in the service industry, and you're like, oh, this is probably going to come across as condescending and shitty, and like it's not.
Yeah.
And he is the reason that Tom Hanks is like, this sucks. Wait, what am I doing? Yeah. I'm doing this all wrong.
That line that I'm going to poorly paraphrase now.
I love her.
I was envious of a man knowing with such confidence what he wanted in life. Yeah. He realizes that guy has it much better than he does.
That could have been so condescending, and it's not.
Yep.
And also the idea of getting trapped in an elevator is like kind of a big New York thing, not just because we live in buildings, we live in old buildings.
Yes,
and so elevators break all the time. So
that the New Yorkiness of that is right. Those weird old shuttery elevators, they're still all over the Upper West Side.
And that everyone has this sort of like folk remedy to fixing like an elevator. Everyone jumps if we push all the buttons. I don't know, maybe like that. Everything about that rings true, even though the situation feels so comical and implausible. Like,
and
I don't
feel
know.
like most versions of that scene are the meet cute or the scene that finally makes the two people work through their issues and realize that they kind of love each other. And instead she uses it to end the unnecessary romance of a different character,
He finally sees her.
Well, it's also because she's like, if I ever get out of here, I'm getting my eyes lasered. And then he goes to say something like beautiful, like everyone else. And she's like, where are my Tic Tacs?
Where are my Tic Tacs? And then she goes, what?
It's perfect.
It's so good.
Can we dissect a similarly crucial scene, the Zabar's line?
Yes.
Oh my God. What a great
Sara Ramirez.
Sara
What a
Ramirez.
Which is
great
another
scene.
classic, as you're saying, like kind of New York situation. It's like, what if you got in the wrong fucking line and it was cash only, and all
people are going to yell at you.
The people with their smoked fish are behind you with their pitchforks.
It's like 6 p.m.
And only
on
at
a November
Zabar's.
Tuesday, the worst time to go.
It's so cute, and it really pushes the neighborhood thing that you would run into someone at Zabar's, like very likely. And I think a lot of people do run into people they know at Zabar's. You know, that's not unusual. And so, like, the fact that they run into each other is not one of those rom-com meet cute things.
No.
It feels like a real situation that she's already set it up so that you believe that, which I like a lot. That these two would keep running into each other and then kind of run into each other on purpose.
Sara Ramirez is.
Oh no, what are you gonna say, Bobby?
I was just gonna say Sara Ramirez is like her best moment is whenever she goes from smiling at being charmed by Tom Hanks to being like completely like despising of Meg Ryan. That facial transition is always hilarious.
It was the first movie ever to shoot at Zabar's, which is crazy because it feels like everyone should have been using this as a location for 30 years. But the other thing is they would only give them one night to shoot it. And it was like in between operation hours. So they filmed the entire thing from like 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. And Hanks, consummate pro he is, mayor of Hollywood, apparently kept on getting on the Zabar's PA system, which they use to announce like which items are special deals to entertain all the extras and keep spirits high at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
He is just
the one that Nora Ephron quoted, which is too fucking charming to handle, is he apparently got on the PA and went, ladies and gentlemen, shoppers at Zabar's want to announce that Meg Ryan is appetizing. Meg Ryan is appetizing.
wow,
That's cute.
What an angel
What a
sent from
charmer.
heaven. The shoe might drop. That's how good he is. The shoe is about to drop. I worry every day of my life.
I also feel like this is, to me, this seems like such an accurate representation of who Tom Hanks is as a person.
Yes.
Like, he's a rich and powerful man. Like, he's an asshole.
Right. Well,
he's a rich and powerful baby boomer man.
Yeah,
of course he's an asshole. Of course he could be snarky, but he's also a sweetie pie.
Yes.
And I think that this is the closest, not that I know Tom Hanks, but like, to me, this is how I picture him in real life.
The dude
Like,
loves a
dick
typewriter.
who is also like, you want nothing more than to be friends with him. Like,
But this is what I wanted to say about the Zabar scene. The what you're talking about essentially. Like, she's in the line. She can't pay. She doesn't have cash. Okay. So she's pleading to use her credit card. Sara Ramirez is giving her, the hard line. Then Tom Hanks comes in, does the same thing, and what's the message here? Like, because it's not like he's like, you catch more flies with honey. She wasn't being rude. She was doing the same thing, which is just like, look, I'm sorry. What am I going to do? Like, and Tom Hanks just comes in and sort of mansplains the exact same. He's like, there's a credit card reader. And Sara Ramirez is like, well, all right. So is the idea, it's just like, he's just automatically gets a pass because he's a rich, charming guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
100%.
so.
Yes.
I think that's part of it. And I also think like the statement here is you're casting Meg Ryan, who at this point is still firmly America's sweetheart. Like everyone calls her America's sweetheart. She's like the cutest, most charming. We all want to be her. We all want to be with her movie star in the 90s. And Tom Hanks is sort of the male equivalent of that. But also he is objectively playing the asshole in this movie. He is playing the villain to the business conflict of this film. I think the point is, because I was thinking this while watching it, the inverse of the Bonfire of the Vanities problem, where he's supposed to be unsavory in that movie, but even when he's playing his most unsavory, there's still something kind of charming and likable about Tom Hanks that he cannot dim. And I think the point is, it's not that he's being better to Sara Ramirez than Meg Ryan is. It's not like she's not being considerate. She's being very sincere and sort of like considerate in her earnest plea. Please just help me out. The point the movie needs to make with this scene is there's something undeniable about Tom Hanks even when he is going to be responsible for shutting down her business.
Yeah,
right.
He's come out and said about, remember when there was all that like kind of weird press around him being like, I don't play villains, or like I'm not like I don't want to play
Rogers,
He was like, I don't want to play a villain like I did. But I think it's also that like he is not, maybe he's not meant to play a villain. He's not really good at playing a villain, and a lot of directors and writers maybe know that when they're like looking for a Tom Hanks vehicle.
Right. Bonfire's also his biggest failure. Like that's his biggest mistake as an actor. I think he took that L hard, and it's not about like I don't want to ding my reputation. It's I fundamentally know there are things the audience will not buy me doing.
Right.
But I think that's why the Mr. Rogers role was so successful for him, because it's referenced in the movie, it's referenced in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, but in the documentary, it's very explicit that like his children don't really like him. They had a terrible relationship. Right. They had a lot of problems with him as a father. Like he kind of was an asshole too. Yeah. Like, so I think that thing where he has to play a little bit of both, but ultimately Charmer wins. Is the thing that he does best.
That movie's incredible. Yeah. It's because it's tying the Hanks persona to the Rogers persona.
But also, I read this Marielle Heller interview where she said, I couldn't make sense of how to tackle this movie. And then I reread the script and I realized Mr. Rogers is the antagonist of the film.
100%.
Like, narratively, that film is set up with him being the villain. He's the obstruction.
Right. That scene in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood where he starts taking out the toys to talk to Matthew Rhys is like a horror scene. Right. Like Matthew Rhys is like, stop it. I'm not into this.
But it's also just like, like Tom Hanks is the same character in our culture as Mr. Rogers is in people who have Mr. Rogers in their culture. He is this iconic, nice man, but he is unknowable.
And there's like a force field around him.
Right. And we could, everyone who knows him could say he's a great guy. I know him, but like you don't know him. No one will ever know him. And that's why that casting was so great, because it is like, if when there's a movie made about Tom Hanks, maybe there is one day, it will have to be the same type of structure.
Right.
Who's going to play Hanks?
Ansel
Elgort.
Josh Gad
is Tom Hanks.
But I think you're right. And obviously, like, Hanks is very effective in a number of different types of roles, including Man, who was very good at his job. But there's something about when he uses that tension, knowing that he can never play full villain, but like the thing going on here and in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and even sort of it's the flip side of this, but something like A Road to Perdition, which is sort of like the most villainous character. He's literally like a murderer and a gangster, but that movie plays all.
But he's a good dad.
That's the thing. It plays off that tension of when it started out and the guy seems like a sociopath and he's totally cold and shut off. But the crux of the movie is he's going to let too much of the Hanks shine through. There's something about this guy that is willing to die in order to preserve his son's humanity. I don't think him not wanting to play villains is a protectiveness, ego thing. I think it is just, he can.
Yeah, I think so too. And but it's funny because that's how it came out through the press, where he was just like, I just don't like playing bad guys. Everyone's like.
When Road to Perdition comes out, which he is not a bad guy in, but he is a murderer.
Yes.
There was a fucking they had to have a whole PR thing of like, Tom Hanks, he's gone dark. Even though he is the hero of that film.
He plays the Mark Zuckerberg character in The Circle, a very bad guy.
Yeah.
That's true. He's a villain in that. Movie. That movie is unfortunately not very good.
No, it's so unfortunate how bad that movie. No. That book is great. It's so sad how bad that movie is. It's really sad.
He's also, of course, the villain of The Lady Killers. I'm trying to think of any other.
The Lady Killers is a huge flop for him. I mean, that was the
I know, but he's good in
and The Circle.
I agree. No, he's great
really
in
funny
it.
in
The Lady Killers is the movie that ends his 10-year, $100 million grosser run. Like, and that was the last time he was like pure villain. Even if it's funny.
I think so, right? Well, The Circle, but
The Circle doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Let's
you can
not talk
reference
about
it as many times as you want. It still doesn't exist, and that's a fact.
I welcome you to The Circle, Griffin. Join The Circle. John Boyega's in that movie.
No, he isn't, because it doesn't exist. You can't be in a movie that doesn't exist.
In The Circle, Emma Roberts catches him having sex. Emma Watson catches him. Anyways, that movie is so bad. It's so bad. So bad.
Well, I find your fan fiction very interesting, Lindsay, describing a movie that doesn't exist.
True. Okay.
I wanted to talk about, we spent a lot of time on Tom Hanks, but I wanted to talk about Meg Ryan, because the year before this, she was in another New Yorkie rom-com that I saw for the first time recently.
Are you talking about
podcast,
the masterpiece
Richard,
Addicted to Love?
Addicted to Love.
Yes.
Which is a very downtown New York movie.
A very caustic movie.
That movie's in my neighborhood. That movie's got some big downtown Griffin inside.
I love that movie.
But the movie is not very good. It's really interesting.
That's outrageous. That movie is great.
I can't call it great. It's tough for me. I've only seen it once also.
David has many times tried to sell me on the idea of doing a Griffin Dunn miniseries because he so badly wants to cover Addicted to Love.
And Practical Magic. Those are the two. Those are the twin pillars.
I love Practical Magic.
But I
So
think that Meg, the reason I bring it up is I think that it's the opposite here. I think Meg can do both. I think Meg is capable of being like a really dark, villainous, questionable character. Like Addicted to Love is pretty straightforward, but if that were more of a thriller and you were supposed to be like, what is Meg Ryan up to? Like, she's capable of playing those things. And in Addicted to Love, she plays an asshole. She plays like a true lunatic. It just so happens she meets someone else who's a lunatic. But
despite being a full stop movie star, Meg Ryan has more character actor versatility than Hanks does in terms of how she can play with the persona. And like in the cut
that came right after,
Tom Hanks could not do the equivalent of In the Cut.
No.
Well, I'd like to see him try.
I would too. I would love to see Tom Hanks suck Mark Ruffalo's dick. That's what you're saying.
I don't think that Tom Hanks could do the weird rom-com.
Yes.
I think that Meg Ryan can do the weird rom-com.
Maybe pre-Sleepless in Seattle he could have, right? Where he's maybe not quite as established as Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Turner and Hooch. I mean, that's his weird rom-com.
Because the Money Pit is like weird, but it's a pretty straightforward rom-com.
Right, like that's the thing. Joe versus the Volcano, The Money Pit, The Burbs. That's sort of like when
that is his weird rom-com. I mean, that's the answer. Yeah.
But he's not a bad guy. Like he's not a bad guy in it.
No. Meg Ryan post this. Like it is because like this movie is a big box office hit. She's had some flops in between this and Sleepless in Seattle. Like Courage Under Fire didn't really work. Addicted to Love was a flop. I feel like French Kiss was not. I think it did okay.
I love French Kiss, and you can't stream it anywhere.
That's weird. I mean, IQ was definitely a bomb. That's a weird.
So weird.
Movie.
What a weird movie.
Think about how different the 90s were, where you just listed 4 or 5 bombs in between. And even still, that entire time period, she was uncontested America's sweetheart.
Yeah,
I would say so.
She didn't lose that title.
This year she has You've Got Mail and she has City of Angels, which despite being a remake of a German masterpiece is roundly just dismissed as like, chick flick.
Wow.
Right. Like at the time, right?
Yes. We wouldn't have Uninvited without City of Angels.
It is one of the best twists.
I am not dismissing it. I'm saying that
one of the most heartbreaking twists in cinema.
Yes.
Can I, Bobby and Lindsay, can I give the two of you the pitch that I came up with in our previous episode?
Oh, God.
Please.
Yeah.
I think Nicolas Cage and John Travolta should have done a face-off style swap. I think Nicolas Cage should have played Michael and John Travolta should have been in City of Angels with Meg Ryan.
Yes.
Well, didn't he play an angel in Michael?
That's what
amazing.
I'm saying do a face-off angel swap.
That's amazing.
Right? Doesn't that improve both films?
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying Cage should have been Michael. Michael was so weird. Michael, the character.
Commentary. That's correct.
That's
fine.
Problem. I think Cage is weirder in a way that would fit Michael. And Travolta is a little more successful at playing conventional romantic lead at one moment.
Michael would have worked if it was Nick Cage.
In the middle of nowhere, thinking about how good of an idea that is.
Right? It's good.
Sorry, nobody's ready to reclaim Michael, but if it was Nick Cage, we might be ready to reclaim Michael.
Look, we spent 2 hours plus in our last episode trying to reclaim it, and I'll tell you, it's kind of impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So Meg Ryan, I'm just like, after, she's doing great when You've Got Mail comes out, right? Big hit. I think she's about 36, 37 when this movie comes out. And then she has, in 2000, she has Hanging Up, which, Griffin, we're going to discuss on Patreon.
On Patreon. We're doing that as a Patreon bonus.
Delia.
Yes. And so that's not a hit, but whatever. Like, it's sort of similar to like a French Kiss where like, it did okay, didn't hurt anyone's feelings. She's got Proof of Life and the big sort of Russell Crowe, quote unquote, scandal where she, and Dennis Quaid break up. Which in 2001, she has Kate and Leopold, which I love, is
it's a decent hit.
Decent hit and is a great movie. And that's more her just being like, I'll do a rom-com. But then after that, it's over.
It's over.
She does In the Cut, and then it's just over.
The Russell Crowe thing totally ruins her. And what is
Russell Crowe ruined it.
What is more,
and it's Russell Crowe and In the Cut, right?
Yes.
Like, they're very separate things, but like Russell Crowe ruins it, and then In the Cut, people are like, "No, you're not allowed to do this. We give up."
Right.
And In the Cut is amazing.
It's also one of those things with distance where you're like, it is so incredibly sexist that the Russell Crowe thing destroyed her that hard when Russell Crowe only grew in prominence because of it.
It was literally good press for Russell Crowe and bad press for her.
And also, how many fucking times did Dennis Quaid cheat on her? I'm not speaking to any knowledge I have, but come on. Like, water is wet.
No, she left Dennis Quaid. That was the story. It was like, can you believe this idiot woman? We thought she was America's sweetheart, and she just ruined this like perfect marriage.
Right, and now we know that like Dennis Quaid was like, a cokehead for like that entire period of time.
He's still an asshole.
Right,
he's still such an asshole.
Right.
In the 90s, there was just there was that thing of like, if two movie stars are married to each other, that is the ideal marriage.
Right.
that was just how People Magazine, etc. thought of it. It was like, Bruce Willis and Demi Moore married? Can you imagine? That must be the perfect marriage.
Must be bliss.
Can I shout out their son, Jack Quaid, who's turned out to be a really good actor and choosing amazing projects, even though, again, he's not been in that many projects, but he's out here doing like The Boys, which was great on Amazon, and fucking +1, one of the best rom-coms of the past 5 years somehow that got nowhere. But
I'll say this too. Jack Quaid, a friend, worked with him on vinyl, great guy. He is also one of those dudes who, for being the son of two massive movie stars, has no fucking ego, no entitlement whatsoever. He is like
that's shocking.
Consummate, like just fucking amazing actors, work ethic. I'm going to do whatever I can to make the scene work. I'm going to go out of my way to treat everyone well on set. I want to believe he got that from Meg Ryan, but he is just sort of like, he's a fucking great guy. He's the real deal.
So you're saying he's the opposite of Chet Hayes, Tom Hanks' son with Rita Wilson.
Exactly.
Cool.
He's what you want Tom Hanks' son to be.
Do you think Chet Hayes will play Tom Hanks in the Tom Hanks movie 10 years from now?
He'll try.
He's going to play Peter Scolari.
I feel like we already talked about this on this podcast, but I still will always cherish the day when Tom Hanks had coronavirus and Chet Hayes became a voice of reason online, where he was like, one love to everyone, like, Dad's doing okay, like, on Instagram. And I was watching it sincerely being like, oh, he's giving me news about Tom Hanks, and I appreciate it.
Right.
I always call Chet Rita's son. That's Rita's son. That's Rita's boy.
Rita's son. Right.
That's Rita's boy.
But on that day, he revealed himself to be a steady hand of reason.
Like, I absolutely appreciated his content that day and not the content of the leaders of our country, right? Like, I was like, at least Chet is giving me facts on the ground.
I mean, he's weird, but he got sober in the past few years. So he went from being truly a terror to being just weird, you know?
Right. I hope Chet Hayes wins an Oscar. I want him to prove us all
Best
wrong.
original song. It's happening.
Weirder things have happened.
Or Best Picture.
He's not terrible in Shameless. He's on Shameless, or he was on Shameless for a few episodes. He's not the worst. He's not great.
Actor. Every time I've seen him pop up in something as an actor, often in a very small role, I'm like, fuck, he's pretty solid. He's
okay. He's okay.
I had no idea he was in Shameless, but it is also like, if you pointed a gun at me and were like, is Shameless still on the air? I'd be like, yes. And they'd be like, what season is it? I'd be like, I don't know.
11. It's like
Showtime's?
The longest running show on pay cable.
It's Showtime's Gunsmoke.
Yes. It has more episodes than Ozzy and Harriet.
When Felicity Huffman went to prison, she was like, well, at least we'll always have the Shameless paycheck.
Shameless money.
Like,
Shameless was a UK show, and the premise of it is like, what if there was a family that was wacky that lived on the wrong side of the tracks? And Showtime was like, we'll take that premise, thank you, and milk it for a generation.
I mean, that show is very problematic in many ways, but a lot of people really love it because it is like one of the few shows that's like about poor people in a way that like a lot 100%. Of shows are not, even though the show itself, when you watch it, because it's been going on for honestly way too long, has had to have so many storylines that it's just gotten so far out of control. Even Emmy Rossum was like, I can't even do this anymore. And this show made me who I am. I have to get out of here. But like the show is weirdly interesting. And if you look at it from that lens, but only very briefly.
Shameless just ended in January. Its 10th season on air. There have been 122 episodes.
And they're doing an 11.
Of course they are.
An angel. Yeah. Well, as long as William H. Macy steps up to the plate, they'll do it.
Oh, another Zoom call. Great. Yeah.
You look really excited, David. The second
I love
you heard there was
it. I love the show
Zoom
being
bomb coming
interrupted.
in. You like started rubbing your temples and your
Sometimes-
eyes, and your face formed into a really hard grimace.
Sometimes it's a really interesting and exciting character, though.
I was gonna say sometimes it's some
never
very
know.
famous people. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Well, accept them. Accept this Zoom bomb.
I accept.
Hello?
Hello.
It's me, Flat Stanley.
Ah, the most famous guest of all.
Yeah, David,
Flat
you really
Stanley.
called your shot there because you said sometimes it's a famous and exciting person, and there's no one more famous than Flat Stanley, who we all know.
The famously two-dimensional children's book character.
Hello.
He's like a piece of paper.
I travel through the mail. I'm Flat Stanley.
Right. And you've been on the show before. And what's up, Stan? Stan the man?
I have to ask, did you see a Flat Stanley bump when I was on the show before? Because I tend to give podcasts a little bump because I'm so famous.
Sure. But I mean, I would say the numbers were a little flat, if you know what I'm
Okay,
saying.
and I see what you did there. And that's why you guys are regularly within the top 15 or 20 on Apple Podcasts, specifically in the subcategory of film and TV.
Of course, that's our subcategory.
Look, I got a problem.
What's the problem?
I feel like a lot of Americans are feeling like Flat Stanley right now, afraid to leave the house.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough right now. These are tough conditions we're all living under, and it's a little scary to go out.
For me,
Sure.
it was because I was afraid I would blow away in the wind. But for Americans,
That's a specific issue to you, right?
there's a deadly virus. Now,
Right, those are the issues.
I've always used the mail to get around.
Yeah, you're an envelope traveler.
Right, but now my friends and family might not want to go to the post office to send me. That's the one step. I put myself in the envelope, and then someone has to bring me to the post office. And I'm trying to get to the grocery store to buy some groceries.
Right, 100%. And so what you're going to need to do is use stamps.com, because with them, you can print postage on demand, skip the lines and crowds at the post office, and save money with discounts that you can't even get at the post office. And if that wasn't enough, stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no UPS residential surcharges. So you can move around even faster if you want.
Saving time.
And it's all at home.
Money. All at home.
Right. You could be a small business sending invoices. You could be an online seller shipping out products. Or you could just be like a little flat guy who wants to go to the grocery store. Stamps.com handles it all with ease. You just use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, package, class of mail, anywhere you want to send.
This is a tough
just leave it for your
question,
mail
but
carrier.
I think I fall into the third category.
Yeah, I think that mostly is going to be your issue, but
Flat guy who wants to travel around in the mail. Yeah.
But it really works for anyone. You leave the mail out for your mail carrier. You can schedule a free package pickup. You can put it in a mailbox. No human contact required.
Perfect,
And you get the
because I
great
just want to get to the
discounts.
grocery store, and I can use that discount to buy more items
Exactly.
at the grocery store.
You're going to get 5 cents off every first class stamp, up to 62% off shipping rates. And right now, our listeners can get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Just go to stamps.com. You're going to click on that microphone at the top of the homepage and type in check. It's stamps.com. Enter check. Stay safe, my friends. My
4-week
friend.
trial. Oh my God! Thank you. I've been waiting so long to rise to that status in your eyes.
You're a regular, Stan.
Oh no! My roommate just turned on the air conditioner. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Can I offer my big take on this movie?
Yes.
You've got
Please,
mail?
I want nothing more.
For how much I feel like Nora Ephron movies are sort of quoted and shorthanded being like the most generic, prototypical, like if well executed, but it's like, oh, that type of like rom-com. The two Hanks Ryan movies, which are seen as like the big ones, are both weirdly experimental in their approach to a rom-com, because Sleepless in Seattle is obviously like, can you create a rom-com with chemistry between the two actors without them ever actually communicating until the last scene of the movie? And then this feels like an opposite test, which is like, they're in the movie a lot together, but what you guys were sort of talking about of like, the Hanks character is so much more of an asshole than you're used to this character being. And the Meg Ryan character is so much sadder than you're used to this character being. In any sort of like oil and water rom-com like this, where it's like a Hepburn and Tracy, they fight and they fight and they fight until they realize they have to be together movie, that's pretty much always the dynamic. Like one is always like a little too snide and flinty, and one is always like a little sad and lonely. And ultimately they realize they have to be together. And this movie is her pushing those two things to their furthest extremes that she can, because you have this narrative conceit in the middle, which is in the email exchanges, they can just be pure rom-com bliss. Like in the scenes where they're not actually together, they can be the most romantic, the most charming, cross-cutting in different rooms. So that allows you to be like, we're going to actually investigate like the sadness of a manic pixie dream girl so that she no longer becomes that. And like the horrible qualities of like the confident, like man with the quip at the ready at all times until he no longer becomes a good guy.
Yeah. I'm just saying there's something about you saying this wasn't the way that rom-coms were prototypically then, but I think Nora Ephron, she made, now going forward, rom-coms are the way that Nora Ephron made them. Like she changed the, now we all think of, now every rom-com is Sleepless and is you've oh my god is but so, whatever you know what I'm saying.
Yes. That's Lindsay, that's kind of what I was going to say. It's like I think there's been so much for the past 10 plus years. There has been that like bubbling narrative of like, man, I wish we had rom-coms again. And like unpacking that narrative
so
would take
weird.
another 2 hours, and it's its own mess. But I think, speaking for myself, because I felt the same way for a long time, but then I think it was like a few times ago, because I watched You've Got Mail a few times a year, and it was maybe a year or two ago, I was watching it and I was like, wait a second, I don't miss rom-coms. I miss Nora Ephron rom-coms. I miss like 3 or 4, you know, like, of course these aren't going to come back because she's dead. And this was a very specific time and place. Like, it's not that I miss the rom-com. I miss this specific thing. And guess what? I can watch it whenever the fuck I want. And I think which is why I think the rom-com that I think is my favorite since You've Got Mail is probably Enough Said, which I think captures this dynamic pretty closely. In that you have this person, like these people who are being deceitful and people who are being really, really messy because they are in love, and people who have to deal with their own personal shit before they can deal with another person's shit. And that's part of it. But it's like, I miss Nora Ephron. I miss You've Got Mail. It's not that I miss the general concept of a rom-com. I miss the way these people talk, and I miss the way these people like.
I think there's also the missing the rom-com thing is also just the loss of like a mid-tier movie.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the loss of like.
That's
I always think of it. It's not even like rom-com. It's just like, what's a movie that cost X amount of money that's not a huge
that's not
superhero or an indie
dirt cheap?
Yeah, so it's like everything in the middle is lost. Maybe we'll come back because of streaming
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a movie that is driven by a star and not a franchise. The franchise is the star, and I
think actors want to make those movies, though. They want to, but they have a hard time finding the ones that then become whatever. I think, like, for example, I don't know if it's even good, but like The Lovebirds, that movie that just came out that's on Netflix, is one of those types of movies. I don't know if it's good again, but like that feels
and not a rom-com, but Marielle Heller movies too.
The Long Shot, great rom-com. One of those movies felt in between, somehow not crazy expensive or dirt cheap, had stars, and didn't do well.
I mean, I
opened it against Avengers. Is still one of the weirdest things.
Yes, I do think, I mean, I have a couple things to say here, but the one that I always jump to when I think about like, what's my model for the best rom-com of the last 10 years, like modern, is Sleeping with Other People, which I love. And I feel like Leslie Headland is someone who is kind of an heir apparent to, and look, there are a lot of things that Leslie Headland is good at that she could do in her career. I'm very excited to see her make a Star Wars show. But I also feel like she is someone who could have a Nora Ephron or Nancy Meyers or Cameron Crowe or James L. Brooks type career, where she is a writer-director with a very specific sense of sort of like acerbic comedy, character-driven comedy, good star
Bobby
vehicles.
knows that's one of my favorites. That is one of my favorites.
Fucking rules so hard. But I do think that's another problem. We talk about what killed the rom-com. You know, the main culprit is they are very cultural. They're very specific to cultures and stars, and comedy is very cultural. And in the 10 years where the industry shifts to being very global, you want movies that can play equally well in any country. Rom-coms go first, and then non-rom-com comedies go second, because those things don't translate as well. But the other part of it is, I think you look at the 2000s and more rom-coms start to be written and directed by men. And I'm not saying only a woman can make a rom-com, but I was watching this movie and thinking about the fact we have covered now 4 filmmakers on Blank Check who have predominantly done rom-coms or rom-com adjacent movies. And they're Cameron Crowe, James L. Brooks, Nora Ephron, and Nancy Meyers. And 2 of those 4 guys got Best Picture nominations and Best Director nominations. And the women did not.
Brooks won. Yeah. No, the women did not. She got like a nomination for Sleepless in Seattle.
Right. And
one for When Harry Met Sally, one for Silkwood. That's it.
Right. And Nancy rather got the Private Benjamin nomination. But
and like when this movie came out, it obviously completely ignored.
People went, it's fluff. It's charming. It's not a real movie.
Meg Ryan got the token Golden Globe nom, and that's it.
Right.
And like, even though this movie was a Christmas hit, like there would never have been anyone to suggest like, oh, well, we should like take this seriously.
Right. Like even the fucking Globes didn't nominate Hanks. Like that's insane. And I do think, there are other things you can analyze in terms of the differences between the Ephron canon, the Meyers canon, and on the other side, the Crowe Brooks canon. But it does sort of speak to a thing of just how much seriously these films seem to be taken when they're directed by women. Oh, it's just pure entertainment. That's not a substantive movie. But yet the ones that linger tend to be those ones that are written by a very specific sense of comedy, sense of respectable viewpoints, writer, director, female auteur, like Holofcener, like Headland. But this is the final thing I want to say. I'm building to a point.
I just have something I need to tell you.
I know. This is the final thing I want to say. In that 10 years later retrospective, Hanks talks about how difficult making this movie was in a certain way, because Ephron was known for being very exacting. And he was saying the scene, the Cafe Lalo scene, is like the hardest scene he's ever done as an actor. It was a 4-night shoot. It's an incredibly long, like 12-page scene or whatever it is. And Nora Ephron, I didn't know this, did extensive rehearsals for all of her movies in a way that the only other person I know who did this in the last 30 or 40 years was Sidney Lumet, where she would collect her actors in like a black box theater and tape out the sets and give them fake props and run every scene with full blocking weeks in advance before when they film, so that when they actually get to the set, it's just perfecting the fine details, but was locking everything in. I mean, she was very rigorous, which people don't talk about because they assume, oh, she's just kind of funny and light and she hires movie stars and they show up and they do the work. And Hanks was like, I was pulling out my hair trying to figure out that scene. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And he said, I think it is the most sophisticated scene I have ever seen in a movie that is not supposed to be viewed as sophisticated.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great descriptor for everything she did well. It's like the sophistication she is applying to everything in terms of form, in terms of actual just insight, is so invisible. And she's not asking to be taken seriously as a prestige movie. She is trying to make pure entertainment for people.
As a writer, she was already a director. I mean, she was like born to be a director. Even, like people always talk about like the writers who say the actors can't improvise. You got to say everything from the script. It's like that was her from the beginning. And maybe that would have been seen as uptight when for like a man, it's seen as like he's just very precise. Like you just have to stay on script. It's like it's part, it's part of the film or whatever. But it's like she was already at that point. And I think also it's something like these actors are willing to give Nora whatever she wants at this point. Like that Tom Hanks, who up until her death, I remember he did a Broadway show that I went to that she wrote. Like he would do anything for her,
right.
And so that was from the very start. To do that type of elaborate rehearsal for a movie
I think he almost pointedly did that play because he knew she was dying. Like he wanted to pay tribute to her one
that
final
play was
time.
weird, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Weird play. Very strange play.
Anecdote before David says his very important thing. In the scene,
this is getting so much build up for something that's going to be total bullshit.
No, it's going to be so important. Everyone's going to love it, and David's about to win another Obie. But Hanks was saying he was pulling his hair out and he couldn't make sense of the Lalo scene, and he just couldn't get over why is he here? Like, why does he go into the cafe? Why does he stay this long? Why does he torture her to this extent? And he kept on trying out different things and it wasn't working. And the script supervisor is the one who came to him and just said, Tom, you want to tell her it's you. Your motivation in this scene is you think if you stay longer, you'll finally build up the courage to say it. And that's what he's playing, and it's so good, and that's why that scene is so good.
Well, you want him to say it too.
Right. David is now going to say the most important thing that anyone's ever said in the history of this podcast.
So, Griffin, you pointed out, I mentioned Meg Ryan nominated for a Golden Globe, Best Performance by an Actress in a Comedy or Musical. She lost. She did not win, as you might guess. She lost to Gwyneth Paltrow for Shakespeare in Love, who goes on to win the Oscar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing crazy about that.
Nope.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you also mentioned Tom Hanks was not nominated for Best Actor. So can you tell me the 5 nominees for Best Performance by an Actor in a Comedy or Musical at the 1998 Golden Globes?
Okay. And just to be clear, Hanks was nominated for Drama Actor the same year at the Globes?
He was for Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
He famously lost to Jim Carrey, who was then snubbed by the Oscars.
Right. Okay. So Best Comedy, 1998.
Here's what I want to say to you. I think you can get 4. I don't think you could ever get the winner unless you just remembered him winning.
I definitely watched the ceremony live. Is Ben Stiller for Something About Mary one of the nominees?
No, he is not.
But Cameron Diaz did get nominated?
Yes, she did.
Okay, I'm trying to think. Comedies of 1998. Are they all comedies, or is one of them sneaking in under the musical?
I
guys?
don't know that I would explicitly call any of these movies a comedy, but certainly they all fit.
But none of them are musicals.
They are all comic dramas or comic adventures. One of them, I guess, is kind of a comedy. I don't fucking know. 0 nominees from this category are nominated for Oscars.
Comic Adventures, 1998.
So 0 of these nominees go on to get Oscar nominations.
List is
Only
like
3
the
of the
worst.
drama nominees made it. They sub in 2 other guys who were ignored by the Globes.
You couldn't pay me anything to watch these movies in a row. This is the worst movie marathon.
Are these movies
Some
mostly
of them
like
are good movies.
hits?
I like a couple of the movies, yeah.
I would say, by and large, these were hits. There's one kind of Oscar-y. There's a couple of Oscar-y. I don't know. There's really only 2 hits in here, actually.
God damn it. What the fuck
All right,
would these be?
All right. So here's some clues.
I can't even
Right.
pull. Okay, yeah, give me clues.
One of them is, it's like a big adventure movie, a huge action hit from 1998. And it's actually a good job on the Globes for nominating this performance. It's a great performance, and it's sort of underrated, although I feel like now everyone's talking about this movie again.
Fun movie.
Great movie. Antonio Banderas, Mask of Zorro?
That's right. Okay, so that's 1.
Okay,
2
cool
is an
nomination.
actor. 2 is an actor we talked about extensively just now. He's been in multiple Nora Ephron movies, and it's sort of weird that the Oscars snubbed him. This was like a big acty performance from him basically playing a real guy.
A real guy.
It's
versus.
It's Travolta?
Yeah.
In
Versus an angel.
1998. Oh, it's
A big
Primary
novel adaptation.
Colors?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so that's 2. 3 is one of the huge comedy stars of the 90s in a massive hit. It just happens to be a terrible movie.
Is it another Jim Carrey movie?
No.
But it's a big comedy star
You're
of the
close.
90s. And it happens to be terrible. And I'm close.
Terrible movie. But it was a huge hit.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie. It's a huge hit. Was he a comedy star who came out of TV?
Yes. I mean, and this was definitely being positioned as an Oscar movie. It just fucking sucked. So, But it was a huge hit. Like, it made $100 million plus.
The movie is Patch Adams.
Yes.
So Robin Williams.
Okay.
Okay. Fourth is one of the most famous movie stars of all time in a movie that he made. I believe it got a screenplay nomination eventually. The movie was kind of a flop.
Bulworth.
It's absolutely demented. Bulworth. Yes.
Okay. These hints are really helping. Yeah.
It is
Right. Number 5 is the winner.
The winner.
I can't believe he won for this.
Everyone's favorite movie from 1998.
This is.
It was a movie that was like, it's a British film. It's in that British film zone of the 90s where they, I feel like once a year, Weinstein or some fucking Weinstein pretender would get his hands on some inspirational British film.
Yeah.
And just cram it down everyone's throats. Be like, you won't believe how charming this is.
Surround. I remember this is one of a very iconic. This is like the movie that in your local newspaper would somehow get like 3/4 of the page and it would be covered in quotes and stars. And you'd be like, I've never heard of this. And this is only playing at one theater in my city.
Is it the guy from Waking Ned Divine?
No. I mean, a fair guess, but that would be a more charming thing.
Right, that would have been charming, and this is the same year.
I forgot this guy was in this movie. I've seen this movie. I could name like several other actors in it. He's a famous actor. I forgot he was in it.
My God.
I certainly forgot he won a Golden Globe.
Wait a second.
If you get this.
Wait a second. Did Michael Caine win Best Actor in a Comedy for Little Voice?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Which isn't, he's undoubtedly, he's supporting in that, right?
I was going to say, I wasn't even thinking about it because he's supporting.
Oh, God.
Little voice.
It's so weird. That, Travolta seems like kind of a slam dunk winner there. You know what I mean? Like, what? Why were they like, you know what? Let's give it to Caine.
It's also, it feels like, were he not trying so hard to prove that he was a serious actor, they would have put Carrie in comedy for Truman Show.
Yeah.
Yes, but they campaign that in drama.
Which I get, but Truman Show is more of a comedy than, say, The Martian is.
100%. Yeah. You could sell it as a comedy. Who cares? Yeah. Jesus. I mean, the Primary Colors, I mean, these are comedies, yes, but they're drama comedies.
But it's also just funny that Little
Truman
Voice
Show's more of
got
a comedy than Primary Colors.
Little Voice got actor, actress, but didn't get film or wasn't even nominated for film. Like Patch Adams made it to the big category, but this Little Voice that got both of those performances did not even get the nod for itself as a film.
Did Little Voice ultimately get a supporting actress nomination
at
the Oscars?
Brenda Blethyn, who gives I have no beef with Brenda Blethyn, but who gives one of the worst performances of the 90s in that film. And she snuck in because they had just given her the nom for Secrets and Lies, which she's good in.
Yeah.
And this is kind of
a beef with Brenda Blethyn.
I love Brenda Blethyn. I have beef.
Bobby, scroll
down.
My
rap beef with Brenda Blethyn ended years ago.
Scroll down to the best original song noms. I gotta say, an incredible lineup. Just one of the finest.
This I gotta see.
You have The Prayer, which won. Reflection, Christina Aguilera. Uninvited from City of Angels, which was already brought up in this conversation. When You Believe, the Whitney Houston Mariah Carey duet.
Prince of Egypt.
Year for best original song.
Yeah.
Good list. Good list.
Yeah, that's right. This is also the year that aging rocker comedy Still Crazy was nominated for Best Picture by the Golden Globes.
Still crazy.
But the weirdest thing, and then we'll be done. We can do the box office game, and then we'll be done. But is that the Best Actor nominees? They carry over Hanks from Private Ryan, McKellen from Gods and Monsters, and Nick Nolte from Affliction. Those three got Globe noms, and then they add in Edward Norton from American History X. Sort of surprising that the Globe snubbed him.
Yeah,
and then Roberto Benigni is the winner. Why did the Globe snub him? He should be beating out Michael Caine, right? He was the flavor of the month.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Here's the box office, Griffin, for December 18th, 1998.
Is this her biggest hit? Does this end up being her highest grossing film?
I believe this is her biggest hit.
Yeah.
Do you guys know? I think, let me find out.
It did 115 domestic?
That's right. It made $250 million
It must have been
worldwide. Yeah. I mean, which is another one of those things where people are like, these rom-coms don't travel. It was a huge worldwide hit.
I know.
It's not like this movie was ignored elsewhere.
Yeah, but a rom-com's not going to make $1 billion. That's the dumb thing. I mean, it's that story of Disney wouldn't make a sequel to The Proposal because it didn't make enough for them, and it made $300 million.
It made less than Sleepless in Seattle domestic, but more worldwide, just to answer your question. All right, so number one, though, is You've Got Mail, $18 million. Number two is a movie we just mentioned. It's a Christmas animated film.
Prince of Egypt.
Prince of Egypt.
And this is December?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you guys think of Christmas Eve? Prince of Egypt. Even though Prince of Egypt is an Easter movie, it's a Passover movie.
But they were.
I love the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah, they were trying so hard to compete with Disney, and Disney Mulan had been a summer film, so they wanted to take.
It's no Rugrats Passover special, but it'll do.
Prince of Egypt is one of the best. Is better than so many Disney movies from that time period.
That's true. Great. And When You Believe is one of
my favorite CDs.
Best songs ever. Yeah,
it's also quietly got the most stacked cast of any animated movie.
Are you kidding me?
Incredible cast.
Is Katzenberg calling in all the favors?
Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, Martin Short.
Insane.
That's them.
Amazing.
Insane. I need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters.
I guess they staged a production of it somewhere. I don't know. There's a new cast recording. Maybe it's coming to Broadway, but the cast recording's out and I listened to it. It's good. It's on Spotify. I recommend it. Yeah, it's great.
Number 3, Griffin, is I imagine your favorite animated film of 1998.
A Bug's Life.
That's right.
Correct. Although I need to rewatch Prince of Egypt, but I think it's A Bug's Life. That movie fucks. It thrusts its consciousness into me.
Number 4 at the box office, and it's sort of crazy that this movie came out at Christmas. It was not a huge hit compared to it's a sequel in a long running franchise. And because the last movie had done so well, I think they were kind of emboldened to make this like a big deal release.
Scream 2?
And it's kind of bad. No, sci-fi franchise.
It's Star Trek Insurrection?
That's right. Yeah. Where they're like, okay, First Contact, huge hit. Let's do one where it's like F. Murray Abraham is a villain and he wants to do more plastic surgery.
He's got too many wrinkles. It's a wrinkle thriller.
Exactly. And let's throw in like a Patrick Stewart, Donna Murphy romantic plot. Like all the decisions they made, you're just like, what were you thinking? This is the worst pivot. Anyway, number 5, Griffin, is a Christmas family comedy that I feel like is now just best known as a horrifying internet meme. How to describe?
It's a bad meme now.
I don't know. It stars one of your favorite actors.
Oh, yeah.
It stars one of my favorite actors. Oh, yes. This movie is a terror. It is called Jack Frost with Michael Keaton.
Yes. Yes.
Now, do you know a fact about this movie?
I know that he turns into a snowman. I know that in the trailer, which I've seen like 400 times, even though I've never seen this film, at one point, like some snowballs hit his snowman body, and he has boobs, and he's like, I don't think so.
He goes like, yeah. That movie sucks. That movie is a nightmare. That's what they should make people watch at Abu Ghraib. I do want to say that movie, the snowman is largely a practical effect, an animatronic. So they had to build it.
He's a big weird puppet.
A long time in advance. They spent a lot of money building this puppet. But they built it off of the likeness of the actor who was supposed to play the title role, who dropped out very late.
God, you've told me this and I've forgotten. Who is it?
Look at a picture of Jack Frost.
I know. I'm looking at it now.
That is pointedly snowman George Clooney. It is meant to be George Clooney.
Oh my God.
How did George Clooney ever consider being in this?
And I think
like even at the time.
After he finishes filming Batman and Robin, he's like, fuck, I might need to get a little more selective in what I do.
Right. He's like, clear the decks. Yeah. I'm only doing Soderbergh and Coen movies for a few years.
Right.
That's one of the best fun facts I've
ever heard. Does it not look exactly like Snowman?
Yes, it does.
Oh my God.
Clooney should be paying Keaton like wage still, like paying him because he got out of this movie.
Yes.
Like monthly salary.
I think that's how Michael Keaton survived without making a film for the next 10 years. I think it was.
Right. Clooney was just
paying him in tequila and Nespresso or whatever he sells.
Right. It was
Nescafe
like
or whatever.
It's George Clooney. Oh my God.
Yes. It's crazy.
And it's he's like a rock musician who dies and then returns as a snowman.
He's worse. He's like Bruce Willis style Bruno the Kid, white man, a harmonica based blues musician. But it's also also incredible because Michael Keaton has such a distinctive face that would be so easy to caricature on a snowman, but instead he's got like the Clooney chin, the little button nose, the black.
It's also just weird that one Batman threw it to another Batman.
And that Keaton was already.
They lobbed the snowball at the other one. Yeah.
Like also, what is with the genre of dads having to be dads despite crazy circumstances?
Right.
Like
Right.
he
Like
wants to be a good
Modine
dad,
one where the shitty father becomes a dog.
like he wants to be a good dad, but he's a snowman. Like how is he going to
He
do
wants
it?
to be a good dad, but he's a dog.
I'm forgetting who.
He wants to be a good dad, but he's Santa Claus.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Griffin, I'm seeing that Jack Frost is 101 minutes long.
It's long.
That feels like an eternity.
It's long. It's long. It's really long. It's really
Like, that movie
long.
should 100% be 73 minutes with credits.
It's also weird that like Keaton is already on a downturn at this point. Like he's playing like the sixth lead in Jackie Brown.
He's great. Hey, wait, no disrespect to the Ray Nicolette.
He's
cinematic
amazing in it. But I'm saying he's not like his leading man Bloom is like sort of off the rose at this point.
Multiplicity is the end.
So for them to spend all this money building this snowman and just go like, I don't know, fucking Michael Keaton, we just need to film. We cannot swallow the money on this snowman. Last thing I want to say, what were we talking about? Jack Frost, Keaton. Fuck. I was about to say something that was funny.
What?
Ray Nicolette. I don't know. I might have lost it. I'm going to listen to this episode and I'm going to scream at myself. I had one really funny short anecdote to say that I think was adjacent to Jack Frost, and I can't remember it in the episode.
Well, why don't you play us out? And maybe while you're doing that, it'll occur to you.
And as I'm doing that, remind me of the things we were just talking about. Bobby and Lindsey, thank you for being on the show. People should listen to Who Weekly. One of the best in the game.
Thanks for having us.
And
we'll take any excuse to talk about You've Got Mail. It's the best.
Yeah, truly. We have our own. If you're a patron subscriber to Who Weekly, there's a full DVD commentary track of us just doing more bullshit talking over the film.
That's a good selling point.
Just saying.
That's a good selling point.
Just saying.
And follow both of you on Twitter to the best in the game.
Why not?
Yeah.
This was really fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Until our president outlaws both of you from tweeting personally.
I pray he does every day.
Yeah,
I'd love
please.
to be.
Just shut the whole
for me to
website
tweet.
down.
Sweet release. And thank you all for listening. And please remember to rate and review, subscribe. Thanks to Andrew Guda for co-producing this show and doing our social media. Thank you to Rachel Jacobs for editing, help. Lee Montgomery for a theme song, Joe Bone and Pat Reynolds for artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit. Go to patreon.com/blank check for our show Blank Check special features, where at this point we are covering the Mission Impossible movies. And as David said, I think right around this time we'll be doing a special episode on Hanging Up, Diane Keaton's one feature film directing credit. A movie where my sister just texted me and said, how is it possible that there is a movie starring Diane Keaton, Meg Ryan, Lisa Kudrow, written by the Ephron sisters, directed by Keaton, and I've never heard of it? And I said, because it's that movie. It is the only version of that movie that you would have never heard of.
It's a weird one. We'll talk about it.
Were you about to say something, Bobby? You had your finger pointed up.
Oh, I was waiting until the episode was over.
Oh.
Is it over?
Finger.
Tune in next week for Lucky Numbers.
Do you want to announce the guest?
We almost certainly know who it is, but I don't want to say it just because in case anything goes wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
But I think people will be very happy with it. Very on brand. A favorite guest returning. And as always, Bobby, what did you want to say?
This is a Richard Lawson story that I'm retelling on his behalf. But this was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. You have to ask him to tell the story, it'll be better. But he texted me and a couple friends and was like, I'm at a screening for a movie and I'm sitting behind Delia Ephron and Carol Kane. And
oh my God.
Which is like a funny, I guess they go to screenings a lot, whatever. So it's not surprising to see them. But they were talking really loudly and there weren't a lot of people there. And they were talking about Diane Keaton. and Carol said something like I don't want to mimic Carol's voice, but I guess she was like, what? Like, I love Diane. She's one of my best friends. Like, she's one of my best friends, whatever. And Delia said, well, I have a problem with her, blah, blah, blah. And Carol's like, why do you hate Diane or something? And she goes, she ruined the best thing I ever wrote. And that thing was hanging.
Wow.
And I think about, anytime Hanging Up comes up, which is not often, I'm like, oh God, Delia Ephron's got a bone to pick with Diane Keaton.
I believe it.
Well,
why didn't Nora direct that movie?
She ruined the best thing I ever wrote.
Hey, look, David, I can't wait to get into it behind a paywall.
But I was also very tempted to do
Starbucks.
No, what is that? What is that? What are you doing? You're taking all the podcast? That podcast is a garnish. I was between those two.